Hello everyone, today, I'll be going over What If Deku Becomes Momo's Titan Part 8. Chapter 31. Damn it all. Why did I even think that making a bet with Nezu is a good idea? A white-haired woman with rabbit-like ears exclaimed angrily, in her hand a small list of students that she would need to take under her tutelage. She and one more pro-heroine were sitting in a lounge, waiting for the start of the lessons. It isn't going to be that bad. You have that green-haired girl who was in third place and the one from second place too. A slightly older blonde woman with metallic ornaments in her hair replied, her yellow reptilian eyes quickly scanning all the names on the piece of paper. But it's going to be so fucking boring. There's no way any one of those brats could spare with me even semi-seriously. I will just stand there and correct their sloppy forms all day. Mirko barked back to her colleague, clearly not intending to stop anytime soon. Sighing deeply, Tatsuma Ryuko looked at her own invitation. Only one name was under the listed students that she would have to teach, one that she didn't even consider. For fucking fuck's sake. I'm stuck with those brats and you got him. That's unbelievable. What are you even going to teach him? The white-haired woman looked livid after seeing her colleague's list, one of her ears twitching violently. I don't know myself. He won with you so easily, it's strange they even want him to participate in this program. The blonde replied, and the other woman growled like a rabid dog after that statement. It was a fluke. I could kick his shiny metal ass without a problem. It's stupid to just end the fight because of some line on the ground. If that fight was real, he wouldn't stand a chance. Mirko once more exclaimed, punching her palm for emphasis. Yeah, right. Both of us know that he was holding back in a major way, even opting to just toss you out of the ring instead of taking any risks at injuring you. The dragon hero replied. Bullshit. I'll take him down, just you watch. Ahem. A squeaky voice interrupted their conversation, making them both look in the direction of the doors. Nezu in all his glory stood there with a mischievous smile on his face, or what could go as one on this strange chimera anyway. I see that you are really eager to start teaching, Usagiyama-kun. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't take down any of my students while trying to teach them thought. Good morning, Principal Nezu. It's good to see you in good health. The dragon heroine replied after a few seconds while bowing her head a bit. Ah, thank you, Tatsuma-kun. We didn't talk for quite a while. How have you been after graduation? I've been following your heroic career and it's warming my heart how good a heroine you are. I've been doing my best, she said with a small smile. Can I ask you what is expected of me today? I'm sorry, but I fail to see any reason I would be assigned to someone like Knight. He is quite a fighter already if that exhibition match with Mirko can be taken as a benchmark. Well, the situation with our honor student is quite different. I won't divulge anything personal, but it needs to be said that he didn't have any real opportunity to engage with our heroic system. He was fighting for his survival nearly all the time that he spent in America. That's why his outlook on things may seem a bit too serious for someone his age. The white-furred chimera started, motioning for the two to follow. They did just that, exchanging a few glances at the new information. I would like to ask you to show him firsthand how our brand of heroism works. Allow him to experience a bit of normalcy outside of those walls. You want me to take him on a normal internship? Like before this program? The blonde heroine asked. Well, you can say that. Of course, you would need to base your patrols in the vicinity of the school, unless you can provide adequate space for him. Nezu replied while leading the two out of the main building and in the direction of the giant training gyms nearby. I would suggest that he could use one of the garages in my agency's building, but that seems a bit too degrading. It's better to just patrol nearby. Ryukyu replied after a few seconds had passed, the white-haired heroine beside her looking around and clearly bored out of her mind. I'm a bit curious though. Why me? Well, I think that you will be able to deduce that by yourself. His situation is really similar to your own at the start of your career. It would be good if you helped him with that in any way you can. The principal replied. A few groups of students were already going through warm-ups under the eye of a few heroes on the running tracks in the distance. The three of them arrived quickly at the gates to a giant building, a large Greek letter delta over the entrance. Through the open doors, a small group of students could be seen to the side in a small area with workout equipment, the steel giant standing in their midst. He was standing in such a way that he was able to spot the two girls who were bench pressing what practically amounted to an equivalent of a small car. One was surrounded in emerald lightning that was erratically dancing on her figure, the bar in her hands steadily moving up and down. The raven-haired girl on the second bench was trying to keep up, but it was clear that she was nearing her limits. Do I really need to teach all those brats? Can't I just take those two and be done with it? Mirko asked after seeing that beside the Titan all other students belonged to her group. So you intend to back out of our little agreement? Nezu asked in a tone of voice that sent a few shivers down her spine. Of course not. I'm just not that good at teaching, especially so many brats at once, the rabbit heroine tried to explain nervously, thankfully being interrupted by the cheers from her future students. Looking in their direction, the three adults saw how the steel giant delicately plucked the massive weight from the hands of the raven-haired girl and set it back in its place. The greenette did it by herself shortly after, doing one more repetition for good measure. Both of them seemed a bit tired but shook hands with a smile on their faces. Well, you two are the last instructors to get their groups, so let's take care of this, shall we? Nezu broke the short silence and started to guide the two once again. You don't need to worry about being unable to teach our students too, Usagiyama-kun. An old veteran hero will be joining you as an assistant and an expert on high-speed movement. He will be arriving later today or tomorrow. So I'm not only gonna babysit them, I'm also going to have to look after an elderly guy. Did I do something to you personally or something? The rabbit heroine grumbled, seemingly accepting her situation somewhat. The white chimera only chuckled, waving to the giant who spotted their approach before anyone else. Good morning, Principal. I'm assuming those are our instructors? Izuku's loud voice easily carried to the approaching people at the same time, alerting his own group about them. Sup, Tiger Rabbit? He added casually at the end, gaining a few confused looks. I told you to stop calling me that. The shout from the furiously blushing heroine didn't help with the confusion at all, only making it much worse in fact. I just like watching you go all tsundere out of nowhere, he replied with an amused tone, getting only a low growl of frustration from the woman. Knight-san. I implore you to address our instructors with the proper respect they all deserve, especially someone as prominent as Mirko-san. Iida immediately started to reprimand him, appalled by the giant's behavior. I don't need anyone to defend me, Four Eyes. Mirko barked back on instinct, still barely stopping herself from kicking the damn metal brat. See? For all you know, she probably likes that too. Why would she invite me for a date otherwise? The fuck are you talking about? Something got loose in there or something? The rabbit heroine exclaimed, murder in her crimson eyes. I distinctly remember you saying that you want to eat some carrot cake and katsudon sometime in the future with me, and you did call it a date afterward, Izuku replied, clearly having fun. Oofufufu. I didn't hear anything about that earlier, Izuku. Mind telling me the details? A sudden shiver ran through everyone gathered, with the source walking up to the metal giant. Momo stopped just next to him, gently patting him on the leg and smiling like an angel. The Titan's optic widened a bit for a second, as if he realized something, but returned to normal just as fast. Ahem. As interesting as watching you interact is, I'm afraid that we don't have that much time to waste. Nezu said, breaking the growing silence. The picture of a titanic war machine being slowly intimidated by a smiling young girl is certainly unusual and amusing. As one of the best CQC specialists available, Usagiyama-kun will be responsible for polishing your skills in that regard. I'm glad to see that you all took our recommendations regarding your choice of instructors, even if it may seem strange at first. The chimera continued, with the students loosely gathering into a line in front of the three adults. Despite popular opinion, it isn't the quirk that decides the outcome of any confrontation that you may find yourself in. Even against a hard counter to it, you still have your bodies to depend on. Okay, brats. All of you minus the big guy onto the track and do some warm-ups. I'm not dragging your asses to Recovery Girl because of a sprained ankle or some dumb shit like that. Seeing that the principal ended his short speech, Mirko ordered the students, who started to follow her instructions. "And what about me, Tiger Rabbit?" the Titan asked, with one of the white-haired woman's ears twitching violently. "I swear to God, if you call me that once more, I'm going to grind your ass into the floor." "Ooh, kinky," the Titan replied, his eye shutters nearly closed in amusement that was dripping from his voice. "I'm fucking done. You little infuriating piece of..." Grumbling to herself, Mirko marched off after the students, who were still listening in despite doing their exercises. "No, like really. What about me?" he asked after her, this time getting only a middle finger in reply. "She must like you. Normally she would try to stomp you into the ground by now. I'm even surprised that she isn't doing it right now." Another very familiar but at the same time foreign voice replied to him, causing the steel giant to at long last acknowledge the blonde woman beside Nezu. "I'm guessing that my training is going to be different from theirs?" Knight asked, looking the calm woman over for a few seconds. "Quite. Your combat prowess is much greater than any of our students, but it is at a cost. We are going to try and mitigate that, by making you train under Tatsuma-kun." Nezu replied while pointing with his paw to the blonde woman in question. "What do you have in mind then? If I'm not mistaken, my instructor is the dragon hero, Ryukyu. Will my training be centered around aerial combat?" "You can fly?" the dragon heroine blurted out after hearing that statement. "I'm a man of many talents," he replied with a happy tone. "No, Izuku-kun. Your training will be much harder than something trivial like that. You will accompany her on a small internship to observe an acting hero in the field as a workplace experience." Nezu replied with a small smile forming on his furry face. "Won't it cause any problems for the civilians or the infrastructure? My body isn't really suitable for just sauntering across the town, especially if I'll be required to act in any capacity," the Titan replied with uncertainty. "That's exactly why you need to get some experience in that regard. It's much better to do that in a moderately controlled environment, no? And of course, you wouldn't be required to intervene in any way whatsoever. You don't possess a hero license of any kind yet, and are still a student. Your role will be that of an observer, following and learning how a proper hero acts on duty. You don't need to worry too much. As a pro hero, I'm also able to grant you permission for quirk usage if the situation calls for that." The blonde heroine decided to enter the conversation, sending a friendly smile to her new student. "Nezu, do you think that Najire-chan would be able to accompany us? I didn't see her for quite a while, and it would be good to have someone who knows this city." "That's a splendid idea, actually. Why don't you both wait at the main gate while I'll inform her to join you there?" the white chimera asked with a happy voice, already walking back to the school building with the two in tow. Just before leaving the building, Knight sent a glance to Momo, who was still in the middle of her exercises, confirming that she would be safe for now without him around. "So what can you tell me about your abilities? It's important to know what we have available just in case," the blonde heroine asked with curiosity, her eyes scanning the Titan that clearly was looking different from the one at the festival. "That list is quite long. Why don't you try to guess?" he replied while keeping in step with her despite his much larger stride. "From what you displayed against Mirko, I would hazard a guess that you are faster than you look. Precision and control needed to corner and outmaneuver her in such a way are impressive too, which will be good in handling any rescue operation. Strength and durability are clear, especially after you shrugged off such extensive wounds as if it was nothing and returned to your work with just one arm. There's also that object manifestation ability that you used to create that flagpole when the first round of the festival was taking place. That's a curious one." Ryukyu counted out what she could deduce from her own observation. "I'm also heavy," Izuku added with a small chuckle. "Heavy? Yeah, around 20 tons heavy. It shouldn't be too much of a problem in the city, at least until I have to move quickly." His reply shocked the woman a bit. Her dragon form was not even a comparison to the teen walking beside her. "Don't worry, the school will cover any accidental damage you'll cause," Nezu butted in. "I'll try not to cause any, but thanks," Knight replied to the chimera that entered the building and left them two alone just after that. It didn't take too long for the duo to reach the main gates to the school property, the doorway itself being more than big enough to allow the Titan to walk through. I'm assuming that by Najire-chan you meant one of my upperclassmen, Hado Najire? I saw her performing in the festival. It was a nice spectacle. Izuku started while looking at the city that was at the base of the hill that served as a pedestal for the school. Yes, Najire-chan is her hero name actually. It's cute and endearing if I have to admit. What's yours? The heroine asked after leaning on the wall beside the entrance. Knight. Well, it could be worse. When we are on duty we should use our hero aliases. It's more of a tradition at this point than anything else. It's rather easy to find information about you when you are a high-ranking hero, so a cool title that will go down in history is a silver lining at least. She replied, smiling a toothy grin at him. An old friend of mine told me something similar a long time ago, the steel giant said with a bit of melancholy, his gaze still going over the bustling city nearby. I don't want to be insensitive, but your size can hinder you a bit in the city. With a lot more heteromorphic class quirks in recent years, the walkways and the rest of the infrastructure were mostly adjusted to that, but there still are some alleyways that you won't be able to enter. Ryukyu said after a few seconds, her eyes scanning the dark red and black form of the metal giant once more. Don't worry, I'm aware of that and it isn't anything I'm uncomfortable speaking about. I'm even a bit surprised that it isn't more of a problem, especially in urban areas around here. He replied, still scanning the buildings in the distance. The people living their days without fear, civilian vehicles moving with purpose, and overall calmness. All of it felt so foreign that he had an urge to walk back to the gym that Momo was at, just to check if everything was as it should be. Our situation is similar. My quirk is a transformation type and my other form is even bigger than you are now. Granted, I'm able to get back into my human form, but I'm only as strong as any other woman with hero training. That's why I'm specialized in only a few fields of heroics that are suited for my talents. The blonde heroine continued her explanation, not aware in the slightest that her student was starting to get uneasy. Saying all that, as heroes we won't be restricted to those fields, so we can do anything within our capabilities to respond to a situation. You may not be able to pursue a purse snatcher throughout cramped alleyways, but you can help direct him into an ambush made by other heroes. You may not be able to participate in indoor fights, but you can ensure the safety of the civilians nearby, even become a shield for them when quirks or bullets start flying around. That list just goes on, but I hope that you get the point. I believe so. My partner will be able to handle anything on a smaller scale, and if not I will always watch her back, he replied with certainty. Partner? You mean that girl from the festival? It's nice that you have someone like her. The blonde smiled at him, thinking how such high school romances rarely survive the reality check after graduation. Seeing that he directed his attention back to the school, she did the same, the rapidly approaching form of a blue-haired girl clearly visible with the golden glow from her quirk. Throwing her limbs forward, the young heroine in training blasted the air with her quirk and came to a stop just beside them, gently falling onto the ground. She was in her hero attire, a white and blue bodysuit with rather large, green gauntlets on her forearms. Ryukyu-sensei. And a giant robo-kohai. Are you really stuck like that? How does it feel? You have only one eye. Does that mean that you don't have depth perception like a cyclop? Did you paint yourself like that? I liked the green one from the festival more. How did you win with Mirko? And why did you get damaged later in the tournament? Did it hurt to get your arm blown off like that? I bet it did. Oh hey, you have antennas like me. Antenna buddies. Not even waiting for her teacher to return the greeting, the brunette started to pepper her underclassmen with question after question with a large smile. Yes. Normal for me. I'm using more than just one type of sensor to achieve depth perception. I have an active coating that I can change at will. Superior speed, strength, and surprise tactics. Absorbing force instead of transferring it out to minimize damage to the surroundings. Yes. Thank you. And to her astonishment the Steel Titan replied to every single one of them without a pause, causing her eyes to shine with happiness. Okay. Calm down you two. We will have enough time to talk, but for now, we should head out. Najire-chan, can you help me with planning our patrol route? With a bit of luck, we will be able to go through the basics before vultures start to gather," Ryukyu said, stopping her students from any further discussions. Fear. That was the one feeling that she wouldn't forget to the end of her life. With shuddering breaths she tried to take in more air, nearly choking on the heavy smoke that permeated the surroundings. Her eyes shut tightly, shedding tears that didn't do much to help with the irritation that burned without any way to ease the pain. She could hear the screaming, the begging, and the nauseating sound of flesh being torn apart. The voice of her caretaker pierced her ears like the wail of a banshee, only to be stopped by gurgling and a wet splat. She didn't like the woman, always threatening her like a plague because she had one of those meta abilities. The older woman made sure that she knew that this was a curse from the gods because she was a sinner, pinning all bad things to her because of that too. All of this didn't really matter to her, especially now. Lying under the collapsed ceiling of her small, cell-like room, the young girl couldn't bring herself to hate the older woman. Certainly not enough to wish her the death that she could only imagine by the gruesome noises, the demonic screeching of the creatures responsible being a background to the chaos. The young girl didn't know how long she was trapped, the minutes stretching into hours and hours into eternity. At some point she lost consciousness just to be woken up by something trying to get to her, the horrible screeching and the sound of claws trying to dig through concrete making her breath hitch. She covered her face with her hands, holding in breath for so long that she felt lightheaded just to not get heard by the beast beside her. After another eternity it gave up, walking away and leaving her buried in the remains of the orphanage. The tension leaving her body caused her to faint once more, the tears running down her face without even a whimper. She jolted, suddenly awake. A faraway thunder got her attention, together with the monsters that screeched loudly and sped off somewhere. All of this she could only imagine from the noise, hundreds of spindly legs stomping in a cacophony of crashes and thuds. After half a minute the thunderous sound repeated, a bit closer than before. Then an ungodly roar broke the short silence after the last thunder, sounding like a beast that would tear apart anything in its way. It took her tired mind a significant amount of effort to stay awake, her throat parched to the point she could barely whimper with the noise getting louder and louder. A few bigger explosions shook her small space, and some dust fell on her head. She tightly shut her eyes, covering her ears and begging for all of this to stop. As if her prayers were listened to, the cacophony suddenly ceased, bathing her small world in silence once more. For a few moments, she couldn't hear anything, as if all that had happened was a figment of her imagination. It quickly turned out not to be the case. The ground beneath her shook slightly for a couple of minutes before everything got silent once more. She could barely hear someone shouting, the first human the young girl had heard in ages. Bugs. They shredded those people. Even the kids. A slightly gruff voice of a woman could be picked out. She must have been really close to be heard. There are no survivors. I'll try to check out the neighborhood. There must be someone somewhere. The woman's voice sounded tired and sad, but what she said made the girl want to cry once more. She was still there. They couldn't find her and she would be sentenced to death in the ruins of her collapsed home. "Help me," the girl whispered out, her voice so low that she herself had trouble hearing it. "Help me." She tried once more but without too much success. The voice of the woman was getting further and further away. In desperation she started to hit the concrete above her head, the only thing she could reach in her awkward position. Grabbing a piece of the rubble she hit it over and over again. It didn't do much, with fresh tears going down her face as she didn't hear any response. "Help me." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm back at my previous position." The woman's voice suddenly returned, with her talking to someone she couldn't hear. The young girl didn't mind that, using the piece of concrete once more. "I'm here. Help me." She managed to croak out with her throat feeling as if it was on fire. She struck with her makeshift tool, making as much noise as she possibly could. "I got one here." "God damn knight, you were right. Get your metal ass over here. There's a need for heavy equipment." The woman called out immediately after hearing her, making the girl nearly pass out from relief. "Hey, can you hear me? Help is on the way." The woman called out, this time clearly to her. For the first time in forever, the young girl felt tears of happiness streaming from her eyes. eager to get out of the tomb she found herself in. After a few more minutes she felt the ground vibrate with powerful steps, making her fear that the monsters from before had returned. Those steps were clearly carefully measured though, not like a horde of man-eating insects the size of a car. Perimeter secured. Prepare a medical station. A booming male voice resounded, giving the trapped girl goosebumps. A few more voices could be heard with his arrival, all of them verbally acknowledging his orders. "Is there any contact with the survivor?" the man asked. "Not really, but I could faintly hear some words, which sounded young and female. She's somewhere here, near those claw marks. Those damn bugs probably tried to get to her but couldn't burrow through the wreckage. The scans show that it's structurally stable. I will lift it, then you get her out." "Sounds like a plan. I'm ready." After that conversation the young girl felt the whole building, or what's left of it, groan and shake all around. The ceiling that was just a few centimeters above her head started to slowly lift, dust and debris falling from it. She heard something like an engine working really hard, like a very big digger that she once saw working at a construction site. Suddenly a ray of sunlight struck her right in the face, blinding her eyes that were so used to darkness after all this time. A pair of strong arms circled her chest, a woman not really much bigger than herself hoisting her up with a grunt. "Don't worry, I got you. Was there anyone else with you here?" a gruff but still feminine voice asked, the same one that found her. Not having enough strength to speak, she just shook her head, only she was locked up in solitary at the time when everything started to shake and collapse. Cursing under her breath, her savior carried her slowly out from the rubble into the sunlight, the girl's eyes burning from the exposure. She tried to look around but her eyesight was so blurred she couldn't even see the woman who was carrying her. The only thing she could spot was a green giant that was holding up the large piece of concrete that both shielded her and trapped her. Her tired mind couldn't comprehend the sight, only barely managing not to pass out. "You can put it down, Zuko. There's nobody else there." The woman who was carrying her spoke up, the giant following her words and setting everything back as gently as he could. "What's her status?" "Severe dehydration, looks like a light concussion, and a few bruises. She alive." A strange sound broke the short silence that emerged, originating from the giant. With her eyes still blurry she saw a man in bulky armor exiting from what she realized was a machine. A mecha like in those old picture books before the monsters showed up. He was rather tall with a strange armor that looked as if it had another set of limbs layered on his own. It hissed and wired with the man's every move. "I can't find anyone else. It's a miracle I was standing still when she tried to get our attention," he spoke with a deep voice. The young girl tried to focus on the man, her head suddenly starting to spin with a strong headache. The world spun and she needed to fight her own body to not fall unconscious. "She's a fighter," the woman who held her said with a bit of mirth in her voice, clearly noticing that the young girl fought an uphill battle. "It's not the time for jokes like that, Tiger Rabbit," the man scolded, walking up to them and taking the girl from his teammate, effortlessly picking her up. Squinting her eyes, the young girl could see that he had only one of his own. The second one was covered by a metallic eye patch that had a few green lights on it. The one that remained though was a green emerald that shone in the daylight, making her feel strangely safe. His forest green hair with black accents was unnatural, probably a sign that he was a holder of a meta ability too. "You are safe now, you can rest," he said to her with a small smile, and the world turned black. XXX, a small girl gasped awake, the dirty comforter she had as the only source of warmth falling completely to the floor. Her irregular and erratic breath was the only sound in the small room, a lone light bulb barely giving enough light to properly see around. Everything was aching, especially her head with a big bump on it. She didn't remember when she was put in this room, or when she climbed into the bed, because normally she would be just thrown inside and locked away. Looking at her hands she saw that the bandages looked new, which meant that another round of testing was behind her. Maybe it's better that she didn't remember what happened in the end. Lying back on her old bed she looked at the concrete ceiling, contemplating how similar it was to the one from her dream. It was trapping her, making her unable to escape. This time thought the monsters were with her and the large green hero was nowhere in sight. Sighing to herself, she looked once more at her small body, somewhat feeling that it should be bigger. She knew that she wasn't that old, but it felt like she lived for eternity at this point, and she still was so small. Her hands and legs were slim and short, not really able to carry her as far as she would want in her attempts to escape. The fact that the bird monster who called himself Overhaul brutally killed anyone who was in charge of not letting her escape was a hard one to swallow, but all of them were bad people. Gently touching her horn, she found out that it was barely there right now, as if her gift was fully drained. That ability felt strange too, as if she couldn't really use it as it should be used, but the young girl couldn't really tell why. She needed to escape. There was no other option, and if she could find that green man in armor, she would be safe like he told her in the dream. Chapter 32. Wait. So you don't see in color but you see color. What does that even mean? That doesn't make sense. A blue-haired girl exclaimed happily, munching on a sweet bun and swinging her legs while sitting on the forearm of her kohai. Both of them together with the heroine Ryukyu were having a break after the morning patrol. They were in the Musutafu Central Park with enough space for the Vanguard-class Titan to comfortably relax for a bit. A lot of children were interested in him, even more than in the actual heroine, who was watching with a smile as a small boy jumped in place and pointed to the giant while pulling on his mother's sleeve so she would look too. Ryukyu had to chase off a lot of reporters and journalists for the first 3 days of their work, some of them coming back multiple times. Knight decided that this caused more problems and danger than needed and answered a few questions to sat their curiosity a bit. They even scheduled a small press conference for later, organized by Nezu himself of course. I'm using a lot of sensors to perceive my surroundings. Most of them are directional and linked to my main optic right here. The Titan replied to his new friend while pointing with his other hand to the single eye. I can see like a normal human if I want, but for the most part, I'm just using a modified version of something called a lidar. It's a device that enables me to precisely measure my surroundings and is much easier and faster to process than an actual eyesight that you are familiar with. It creates a monochromatic representation of the world around me, hence I don't technically see in color. Izuku explained, the girl on his arm looking up to him with crumbs all over her face. Najire-chan, do you ever run out of questions? It's the 4th day already and he answered every single one of them for you. Their teacher asked, sitting gracefully on a bench nearby. But Knight-kun is so cool. How can you not ask any questions? And he is the first person in forever to answer so many of them. Even Mirio just laughs my questions away and Tamaki just sulks in his sulk corner. I don't mind, Ryukyu. Shall we return to? The Titan stopped suddenly, his eye looking into the distance. A distress call was sent from nearby. Unauthorized quirk usage. He said, pointing with his arm in the direction he was looking. He tossed the blue net gently into the air, her letting out a bubbly laughter from the experience. Najire immediately flew off to scout the situation while the two left behind moved after her. How far? The blonde heroine asked while being gently scooped up into the jogging Titan's hand. 1,366 meters. More distress calls were sent from civilians in the direction away from us. Izuku replied, carefully maneuvering between the people who just stopped in shock after seeing a massive machine like him run past. Najire. Update. Ryukyu asked through their communicator, holding onto the giant's hand as he leapt over the fence that surrounded the park. Likely a robbery gone wrong. Suspect is running on foot, with what looks like a small safe under his arm. Around 3.5 meters tall, with animalistic characteristics. No sign of quirk usage. Maybe he's just a mutation type. I'm following from the sky. He didn't notice me yet. The blue net replied via radio. Good job, don't lose him. Knight, follow her signal but don't get too close to not spook him. The heroine ordered. Acknowledged. He replied, increasing his speed steadily and going onto the road to not accidentally hurting a passerby. He jumped over a few cars that stopped immediately after seeing him, most of the people recognizing him from the festival and taking out their phones to take a few photos or film him in action. Heroes Death Arms and Kamui Woods are responding to the call. I recommend cooperating with them and using my appearance to steer the criminal into an ambush. Knight said after half a minute, much closer to their target. He's going to the Koshi train station, around 6 minutes before he reaches it, Najire reported just after. Okay. Let them know that we are closing on him from the back, Ryukyu ordered, preparing herself in case she needed to transform. You can help with securing the civilians, but the fight is ours. I know that you know, I'm saying this just in case you forgot. She sent a small grin to her intern, who chuckled in acknowledgement. After another minute, Izuku slowed down significantly, now barely jogging through the city. An alert was sent to the civilians, most of them retreating into the shops and restaurants that were around the place. Some of them were more action-hungry though and gathered on the sidelines to observe the hero's work. Stop, villain! You are under arrest, Death Arms called to the man, who roared in frustration. You aren't going to stop me. They stole everything from me, so I'm just getting what's mine. The criminal shouted back, his rat-like face twisted into a snarl. He scanned his surroundings, trying to find a way past the heroes. He took a few steps back, just to nearly jump out of his skin as a loud clang resounded from behind him. Knight stood there in all his glory, purposefully stomping onto a metal grate to get the villain's attention. Ryukyu still stood on his palm, her own arms crossed under her bust. I recommend surrendering peacefully, it will be better for all of us, the blonde heroine said, her golden eyes locked on the criminal. What the hell? What is this thing doing here? The rat man exclaimed, his eyes widening for a moment. Fuck it. I was going to do this quietly, but you all just needed to fuck it up. He roared in anger, his body bulging with muscles. He started to grow bigger and bigger, with dark brown fur covering his arms and exposed face. I'm going to America and there's nothing you can do about that, the man-beast roared, jumping upwards onto the wall of one of the buildings. With a mighty leap, he jumped onto an electrical tower and from it onto the train tracks high above the ground. Knight moved immediately, tossing the heroine in his palm into the air to let her transform. A stray thought ran across his head that he was tossing a lot of people around lately, making a small smile appear on his non-existent face. In a flash of golden light, Ryukyu changed into her Western dragon form and immediately followed after the criminal, Kamui Woods using his wooden tendrils to swing after them. Death Arms stayed behind, corralling the slowly forming crowd of civilians away from the battle. The dragon heroine successfully stopped the man, entering with him into a fierce melee. Despite clearly not having any real combat experience, the villain was making some ground with his great strength and durability, tanking a few strikes that could make a concrete wall crumble. Seeing that he was getting cornered, the rat man wound his hand back, the stolen safe in his palm. You want this so bad? Then here, have it, he roared once more, throwing the 200-kilogram safe like a pebble. It struck the giant power tower that he had used earlier to climb into the overpass, destroying it enough to make the metal construct fall over. Knight! The dragon heroine shouted to her intern, permitting him to act. The steel giant was already in motion though, catching the large tower before it could crash into the restaurant it was falling on. The ground cracked under his massive feet and the metal beams he took a hold of bent in his grasp, but the people behind him were safe. Move, people, move. Kid, hold it up. We'll evacuate the civilians. Death Arms immediately rushed into action, once more making the awestruck and frightened spectators move away from the area. Don't worry, I can hold it more than long enough. Najire-chan, I would suggest helping with the evacuation if Ryukyu doesn't need you, the Titan said, correcting his awkward posture after catching the tower. On it, the brunette said, dropping from the skies just beside him. She immediately opened the doors to the restaurant that Izuku saved and started directing the gawking civilians away from the windows and out of the back to get them to safety. On the overpass, the fight was continuing, with the dragon heroine trying to contain the raging villain, and the criminal in question fighting tooth and nail to get away from her. Suddenly a few wooden branches sneaked into the rat man's legs, making him squeak from surprise. He immediately tore the ensnaring tendrils and took a few steps away from his opponent. Stand down, evildoer. You have nowhere to run. A man in a costume made of wood exclaimed, landing in a crouch behind the villain. The rat man growled defiantly, bulking up even more than before. No, I'll never surrender. I'm not gonna be humiliated by those weaklings ever again. I'll join Meta Lee. Canyon Cannon. His monologue was cut short by a skyscraper-sized heroine drop-kicking him in his side, sending him crashing into the building beside. He didn't get up, returning to his normal size while unconscious. Ha! Got one. The new blonde heroine in a white and purple bodysuit exclaimed happily, making a peace sign to the still gawking civilians who started to cheer. Nobody paid any attention to the steel giant that froze like a statue at the entrance of the giantess. Jogging back to her new friend, Najire tried to call him but he didn't respond. Using her quirk she flew to his eye, flying extremely close to it. Hello. Hello. Is anyone home? She called, peering into his eye. The 3 shutters fluttered for a second, with the big green optic refocusing on the girl. Ah, sorry. Did you say anything? The giant asked with a small voice that somewhat surprised the still floating girl. Yeah. We evacuated all the people from the vicinity. Can you move this thing into the street? Deathly armpits over there said it would make cleanup easier, she said, deciding not to ask about the issue for once. Yes, I can. We should wait for emergency responders first to disconnect the wiring though. Don't worry, I can hold this for literal days. Report to Ryukyu, I'll wait here. Nodding to her Kohai, she decided that it was the best course of action too. Firing up her quirk she flew into the air and onto the overpass where she found her teacher scolding a now normal-sized heroine who looked like a kid that was reprimanded for taking a cookie from the cookie jar. The fastest way isn't always the best. We had him cornered and you entering the fight like that only created more destruction. We have to consider collateral damage too when we fight. Ryukyu droned on, also back in her human form. Kamui Woods was on the ground, restraining the criminal with his branches and guarding him until the police arrived. Sorry, I just got so excited about my debut. I wanted to enter the scene with a bang, the second blonde said with a big smile, earning herself only a huff of exasperation from the older heroine. Najire-chan, what's the situation with Knight? She asked after spotting her older intern. Aside from him being a badass and saving around 30 people, Knight-kun needs to wait for the specialists to turn off the power so he can set down the tower onto the ground. Hey, who is this? Are you a new hero? What's your quirk? Were you the one who defeated that villain? I was escorting the civilians away and didn't see it. Najire replied to her mentor's question, immediately asking a few of her own of the newcomer. I'm Mount Lady. Did you mean Knight Izuku from UA? Can I meet him? I'm a fan. The blonde introduced herself, ignoring the rest of the question causing the brunette to pout. The dragon heroine massaged her head a bit, feeling that this could end only in a headache. The amount of paperwork she would need to fill out after didn't help with that feeling at all. You need to move faster if you want to catch me, you zygote. A small older man exclaimed with laughter, launching off a wall that cracked from a hard kick half a second later. Izumi immediately kicked off after him, a fist already pulling back for a devastating punch. Swinging her hand forward she had an urge to curse when her teacher once again dodged the attack, her gloved fist burrowing a few centimeters into the concrete wall that Cementos created in the morning to give them a few more obstacles to work around. You are too fast, Gran Torino-sensei. I'm barely able to keep up. She huffed out after another few minutes of the futile chase. The allotted time for their duel ended with a buzzer that announced a launch break. I'm not too fast, you are just too slow. That full cowl you created under Tashi's eye isn't half bad though. I expected you to fumble around and fire off with everything or nothing. You are on a good track, kid. The elderly hero answered, going through a few stretches to ease the stress on his old bones. Oh, it was Izuku-san's idea actually, he really helped me with it. He explained to me the importance of transferring the load across my whole body instead of gathering force in one place. It's thanks to him that I can even use tactile telekinesis like that. Izumi replied while remembering to use the name she came up with for her quirk, totally missing the reaction from her new teacher. The older man was about to say something but suddenly a body flew over their heads, burrowing into the wall beside. Groaning a bit, Momo peeled herself out of the wall she was stuck in and dropped onto her knee to catch a breath. A large bruise was forming on one of her forearms that she used to block a hit from her own trainer, accompanied by quite a few smaller ones all around the body. Her black hair was disheveled, coming undone in her intense exchange with Mirko, who landed a few meters away from them after half a minute. "Oh, you're fine. Sorry for that, you surprised me a bit. Let's take a break for lunch and we'll get back to kicking ass after. This teaching thing is easy. I'm a natural," the white-haired heroine exclaimed with a laugh, already sauntering to the doors. That woman, Izumi. Can you help me drag Iida, Kendo, Kirishima, Tetsu, and a few others to recovery, girl? I think I need to get this looked at too," the Ravenette said, wincing a bit from the pain in her arm. It was only the fourth day and once again she was the only one to manage staying conscious after the sparring with Mirko. She could admit that fighting such an overwhelming opponent was a bit disheartening, but the rabbit heroine did correct their stances and fighting styles, so progress was being made. "No need, dear, I'm already here to assess the damage," the mentioned heroine announced her arrival, walking up to the three of them. "Well, color me impressed, Sorihiko. For once it isn't you who sends his whole class into the infirmary," she quipped to her peer, getting an eye roll in response. "That's a nasty bruise, but it seems that the bone is intact," the school nurse said to Momo after inspecting her hand, kissing it to use her healing quirk. The black-haired girl observed with curiosity as the dark violet spot on her arm slowly vanished with a tingling feeling, followed just after with a bit of tiredness that she would work out of her system later. Receiving a few gummies from the elderly woman, she waited until Izumi was cleared and started to go to the cafeteria for something to eat. "I still can't believe how strong you are, Momo-san. Most of the people in our class would be knocked out cold after receiving a hit like the one you just took." The Greenette immediately started to gush over her friend, observing how the Ravenette created a hairband and tied her hair back into a ponytail. "But I still was sent away like a ragdoll," Momo pouted a bit, remembering how she barely managed to block the fast kick from the rabbit heroine. "Well, you were sparring with the strongest heroine in Japan. It can't be helped." Seeing that her friend was disheartened, Izumi immediately tried to do some damage control. "Yeah, you are right." The two of them talked a bit more, entering the slightly crowded school cafeteria with students milling around. They quickly took their places in the queue and ordered their food, everyone staring at the small mountain of dishes on Momo's tray. A pink hand waved them over, with most of their class at the table already. "Yao, Momo. You won't believe how famous your boyfriend is right now." Not being able to contain herself, Mina exclaimed even before they managed to get a seat. "What do you mean?" Momo asked wearily. He saved a restaurant full of people from being crushed by a stray villain's attack. "Here, look," the Pinkette said, presenting her phone on which a shaky recording showed Ryukyu fighting with a rat-like villain on an overpass. Suddenly the villain threw something and caused a large electrical power tower to collapse in the direction of the restaurant on the other side of the street. The person recording shouted something, but then Izuku entered the scene, arms raised overhead, and caught the collapsing structure, which made him crouch a little to stop the momentum. The forums are full of clips and photos from that incident, some are even from the people at that restaurant, Kaminari added from nearby, browsing the internet on his phone too. "Damn! Robro is so manly," Kirishima exclaimed with fervor only he could muster, overhearing the news when he was sitting at the table. Yeah. But that's not the best part," Mina said with a Cheshire grin on her face. She scrolled a few times on her phone and showed it back to the two girls, making the Ravenette freeze. A blonde woman in a skin-tight white and purple costume and a purple mask over her eyes was hugging Izuku from the side, with the giant reluctantly giving a one-armed hug back. It looked a bit off, with the woman in question being a full head taller than their mechanical classmate, but to Momo it was something she wanted to do for years. "She's a new hero who actually debuted today. She's called Mount Lady and can change the size of her body. She said that she was a fan of Izuku after the sports festival and wanted to meet him. It seems that Zuku is quite popular with ladies, Yao Momo," the Pinkette said after a while, showing more of the pictures of the two beside each other, and one with the blonde heroine in her normal size being a bit shorter than Momo herself. "That's not fair. The black-haired girl mumbled to herself, stuffing her face with food and chewing slowly. Don't worry, it's clear from these photos that he is uncomfortable with that woman. He has his eye only on you, that's a fact that we all know. Melissa said. Her clothes were stained with oil and hydraulic fluid. She was looking like a mess, with her blonde hair loosely braided on her back not to get in the way. Just beside her sat May, who nearly inhaled her food in seconds and was already tinkering with something that resembled a large baton with a lens at the end. You know that the offer from the sports festival still stands, right? Mina asked, wiggling her eyebrows a little. It wasn't that funny for the first time, and it's not for the second either. The blonde inventor replied dryly. Peef party pooper. The Pinkett said, sticking her tongue out. What offer? Hagakure asked from beside her, drinking a glass of juice. Mina wants to form a harem for Izuku, Melissa replied, barely ducking under the table from a fountain of orange juice that flew straight at her. Booahahaha. Nice reaction time. Laughing her butt off, Mina looked at the reactions from her classmates, which were only making her laugh more. Why him? Not me. Mineta wailed, crying tears of blood. Dude, shut it, Kaminari said, poking the small teen in the shoulder and sending a small shock into his system to make him stop screeching. Can I join? It's not like anyone is going to ask me out anyway, the now calmer Hagakure asked, sending an apologetic look at the blonde who was crawling out from under the table. Sorry for that, Melissa-san. She said out loud, just to be sure. Don't worry about it, Melissa replied, wiping her glasses on the clean undershirt of her overalls. Ahem. There is no harem for Zuku. Sorry Hagakure-san, but you don't have anything to join. Momo said with a bright blush. Yet, Mina said in a cheery voice, getting an unnerving stare from the rabbinette. Sue, how's your training going, guys? Zero asked his friends, deciding that ignoring whatever that was would be the best idea for his health. It's awesome. I took 13 hits from Mirko-sensei before passing out today. That's 2 more than the last time. Hiroshima exclaimed happily. The hell? Weren't you supposed to train in martial arts? Why are you training your quirk instead? The tape quirk user asked with a raised brow. Well, I am training that too, but it's boring. I found a surefire way to make Mirko-sensei go all out, and I'm doing it at the end of the training sessions. The red-headed teen said with a toothy grin. Are you a masochist? It's good that my own training isn't that hard. I'm mostly learning grappling techniques from Gunhead Sensei. Kaminari stated with a sigh of relief. And that gravity girl from the festival is in my group too. It's so strange to meet her again, but for the first time after that whole thing with the second Izuku and all. Don't think too much about that jamming way, your brain will hurt, Jiro called out from the other side of the table. Do you mind? It's a private conversation over here. The blonde teen said back to her, but the girl only shrugged, continuing her meal without care. Hey, does anyone know who Bakubro chose? I haven't seen him too much lately. Hiroshima asked, his food nearly gone. Nah, he's somewhat calmer after the festival, but I would bet that he's trying to fight the toughest hero he had on his list. The electric teen replied, returning to browsing the internet on his phone. Suddenly, in a flash of light, the baton-like device that May was tinkering with shot out a sphere of energy that struck the Pinkett in her arm, making the limb flop lifelessly. The whole table fell silent for a few seconds, May looking with curiosity at her dangling hand as if it wasn't her own. Hey, are you alright, Hatsume-san? Izumi asked with worry. Yeah, baby number 966 is a resounding success. The inventor in question happily replied, the lifeless limb flopping at her side with the girl's every movement. Hatsume, how many times do I have to repeat that we don't test our inventions on ourselves? Especially with so many bystanders? Melissa asked with a visible throbbing vein on her forehead. But Izuku said not to test it on other people too. What am I supposed to do then? The Pinkett asked with indignation. I don't know. Maybe follow the damn procedures. This is why Power Loader Sensei doesn't allow you to enter the workshops by yourself anymore. The blonde shot back. May only laughed her off, gathering tools from the table and clumsily stuffing them into her bag with the only hand that still worked. The second one is just flopping around like an arm of a marionette with its strings cut. Don't worry, it will wear off. The pink-haired inventor said with a smile. What did this even do? Maybe you should check with the nurse. Momo asked a bit wearily. Peef. My babies would never harm their mommy. Hey, printer. Do you know when Izuku will be back? I can't wait to activate the Shield Maiden. May shot back, causing a few curious glances from the rest of the girls at the table. For the 17th time, my name is Yaoyorozu Momo. And no, I don't know when he will come back from his patrol. The Ravenette said with a vein starting to pulse on her forehead. What is a Shield Maiden? She asked after the Pinket's question sank in. She didn't get an answer as the strange inventor was wildly vibrating all around, her still paralyzed arm flopping everywhere from the movement. She fumbled a bit with her pockets, just to take out something that looked like an unholy amalgamation of a smartphone and a few other unidentified devices. Izuku. Where are you, Mecha Daddy? Sweet. I'm on my way. The Pinket nearly squealed, sprinting out of the room. Why does Izuku allow her to know things he doesn't tell us? And why does that gremlin only remember his name and not a single one of ours? Mina asked after a few moments had passed in silence. He called her and not me, Momo mumbled with a pout, stuffing her mouth with more food. Everything's ready. How's the main power supply holding? Izuku's voice rang through his personal workshop, gaining the attention of Nezu and Aizawa who stood to the side and talked between themselves. The black-haired pro-hero had a lifeless expression on his face, as if he was done with life and only awaited this purgatory to end. It's holding up. This baby is amazing. Can I use it in my own projects? The things I could create, the babies the two of us could make. Hey. The pink-haired girl who assisted the Titan started to cackle for some reason, gaining a small grin from the principal. Maybe later May. Luna, connect to the drone named VOO. It should be accessible in your private network. The giant spoke to the small orb that flew overhead, cheering from her excitement. Connection established. Running system diagnostic. All systems online. Initiating onboard power generator. The artificial intelligence announced, ending the sentence with her voice coming from the small orb and the new device at the same time. A soft, barely audible hum could be heard in the room just after that. Good. Don't move for now. Hatsume, how's the artificial neural network? It's all green. No unwanted feedback loops, the system is set to 15% to not give her a shock. May answered while reading from a few monitors at once. Papa, can I move now? Luna excitedly chirped, barely stopping herself like her father asked her to. Yeah, he replied while chuckling. Let's start with. He was about to say something more but a loud clang of metal hitting metal reverberated through the room. Owie. That hurt. Wait. That hurt. Did it hurt? A humanoid robot around 150 centimeters in height was sprawled across the floor with Luna's voice coming out from its head. It was rather sleek, sporting Luna's white paint job accented by blue lights and markings. It continued to lie on the floor, face first into the metal plating that it had tried to take a step onto a few seconds ago. Quote. Hand movement. Izuku finished, clearly amused. Papa, I walked. The artificial intelligence called out to him with so much happiness that it even put a small smile on Aizawa's face. He never would admit that thought. I wouldn't call that walking, but you certainly made your first step. Come on, let's practice a bit. You want to surprise your mothers, don't you? The Titan said with a chuckle, effortlessly picking up Luna's new body and setting it back on its legs. Ah, they grow up so fast, May said to herself, wiping a tear from her eye. Okay, I admit that this is doable now. After half an hour of Luna falling over and bumping into all the possible things in the workshop, Aizawa commented to his employer. But why now? Wasn't she supposed to be a part of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s equipment? And why is she having so many problems with moving around? I believe that no one truly knew what it meant to create a sentient being like Luna here. While she indeed can serve her original purpose, it would hardly be ethical to limit her to only that. The upcoming press conference would be a good place to announce her existence, and with the success of Izuku-kun's reveal at the sports festival, the story we prepared will be believable enough. Nezu replied while sipping some tea. Both of them observed how for the first time the white robot managed to walk the length of the workshop without any mishaps, even if extremely wobbly. Luna's voice once more cheered together with Mei, who was walking alongside her with a tablet in one hand and helping the AI whenever she was starting to lose balance. Well, she probably will slip up eventually and call me her father, but we can just say that I am her only father figure and it just stuck, Knight said from beside them, cleaning supplies and preparing for future work. So what's her quirk, then? I assume that it will be something like yours. Aizawa asked once more. Not exactly. Playing with the idea that she can possess any device in her connected network and operate them at once. We were planning on calling it Hive Mind. With a bit of luck, we will be able to skim around the issue skillfully enough so we don't need to give such information though. The Titan replied, looking once more at the much smaller robot that wobbled around the workshop and was starting to experiment with its arms by picking up anything it could. And answering your earlier questions, Luna is only a couple of months old. She needs to learn how to operate new machines, especially ones as complicated as her new body. I see, the underground hero murmured to himself while taking out a packet of juice and sipping from it through a straw. I saw your performance from earlier today on the news, especially how you stormed through the town after the suspect. Ah, yes. I'm happy to tell you, Izuku-kun, that the damages were negligible. Only a few cracks in the concrete and the road leading to the place where the confrontation took place. I would call it a resounding success. Nezu butted in, still happily observing how Luna was learning. She slowly walked up to them with the pink-haired inventor still following her just in case. Papa, can I go see my mothers now? I can't wait to see their reaction to my awesome new body. She asked her father, who chuckled a bit. I don't see why not. They would be arriving at the dorm from their training right about now, Izuku replied, finishing up with his own busywork. Yay. Let's go. Mei, I love making them happy. Incest is wincest. A loud crunch followed her last words, directing everyone's sight at the steel giant who was in the process of setting down the last crate with supplies on a high shelf. The mentioned crate was tightly crushed in his grasp, components and raw materials spilling onto the floor. Sweetie, why did you say it like that? Izuku asked in a level tone, not turning back to the blissfully unaware AI. What do you mean? That I want to make them happy? She asked back, looking at her big father. No, not that. Where did you hear about incest? I overheard it from Mineta-san, and when I asked about it he told me that it is the ultimate form of familial love. Is something wrong? The white robot asked, looking with its glowing vertical eyes from one person to the other. Well, the word incest doesn't mean that exactly. It's used more in the context of a sexually active relationship between closely related individuals, which is rather frowned upon. Nezu supplied while finishing his tea. Excuse me. It appears I have something urgent to do. Hatsume, close the shop on your way out. Izuku said, already moving to the door. Izuku-kun. The chimera called after him, making the steel giant pause. Recovery girl can heal quite extensive wounds, did you know that? Her quirk is a real miracle worker, especially when patients are still conscious. The principal said with a smile. Does that mean that I'll have one problem child less to teach now? Aizawa asked, not too fazed with the giant leaving the room so abruptly. I'm beat. Who would have thought that a quirk like mine needs so much work? The pinkest girl of class 1A stated, dragging her feet in the direction of the dorms. All quirks need work, Mina-san, Izumi replied from beside her, not really showing any signs of tiredness unlike her friend. How are you doing this? Ashido asked with an exasperated voice. Doing what? The greenette asked back, nervously playing with her hair. This. The pinkette said, gesturing to Izumi's whole body. You don't look any more tired than in the morning, how are you doing this? Oh, I don't know. My normal workout regime is maybe a bit harder. Do you think that's the reason? The greenette replied with a thoughtful look. You are a monster, Izumi. Look at Kiri in all his manliness. Even he is in bad shape after lessons with Mirko-sensei. Mina said, pointing to the red-headed teen who was slowly trudging behind them with a slight limp and was massaging his midsection. But Momo-san isn't that tired too. In her defense, the greenette pointed to her other friend who was silently walking beside them. Yeah, and she is a monster too. I saw all those Momo-shaped holes in the gym when I dropped by. How is she even walking around? Izumi was about to reply, but slight tremors in the ground made her pause, in turn making everyone pause too. Villain attack? The pinkette asked, not really recognizing what it was. No, it's more like, the greenette started, but suddenly their Titan friend burst from around the corner, his metallic feet making cracks in the concrete with every step. He ran past them, straight to the group of guys that was in front of them, consisting of Kaminari, Mineta, and Zero. Mineta. Good buddy. Good pal. Izuku nearly shouted, certainly speaking much louder than needed judging by the winces from the three. Hi. The small teen replied, not really knowing what was going on. I have something rather important to discuss with you. Still with a raised voice he continued. What's going on? Yaomomo. Mina asked her black-haired friend but only received a shrug in response. Can't it wait? I'm freaking spent after the training. Not everybody is a machine like you. Mineta replied with a huff. Oh, believe me, you will have a lot of rest when I'm finished with you. Izuku declared, his voice so threatening this time that Kaminari and Zero took a few steps back. Not waiting for a reply, the steel giant picked up the panicking and protesting teen and ran off somewhere beyond the buildings. Nearly the whole class witnessed this strange abduction, looking dumbfounded after the Titan had already disappeared. Is he going to murder him? Mina asked. Izuku-san wouldn't do something so unheroic. Izumi protested, a bit worried about their small perverted classmate. Even if she didn't really like him that much. Yeah, I wonder what would happen then if I told the big guy that this pervert tried to peek at us and that he tried to feel up Momo at the start of the school year. Mina said with a smug grin on her face this time. He didn't even say hello. Momo sulked to herself, kicking a small pebble away. Don't worry, Yaomomo. I'm sure he is just really busy with all those giant robot things he normally does. I know, Momo said, but once again a strange sound made the whole group look back in the direction that Izuku came from just before. Okay, this one is new, Izumi said after listening to the somewhat rhythmical sound. Mommy, Luna called out, turning a corner and barely managing not to fall over. Her white and blue legs pumped the ground in a solid run, gaining more speed at the straightaway that she had to them right now. Luna, the rabbinette called back, surprised by the sight. Mommy, the artificial intelligence called back once more, clearly happy with the experience. I don't know how to stop. She yelled once more, laughing like a small child. Taking them by surprise with that declaration, the white robot slammed straight into her black-haired mother, making them both fall to the ground in a heap. Oi! Luna moaned in a slightly electronic voice of hers but remained motionless for a few more seconds. Luna, Momo asked once more, pushing the white robot on top of her up to get a better look. Hi. The two blue sensor arrays on her faceplate flashed with her words, the shutters on them making it look like the AI smiled back down to her. Quote. Melissa's going to flip, the rabbinette said, helping their daughter to stand back up. Chapter 33. With a twitching ear, Mirko observed how her group of brats huddled around a white and blue robot that was maybe half a head shorter than the heroine herself. To make matters worse, the giant metal pain in her ass was standing with them too, like a massive bodyguard. Okay. What the fuck is this? And why is it in this group? She snapped after a while. Oh. Hello, Tiger Rabbit. Sorry, I didn't see you before with how short you are. The Titan greeted, causing the rabbit heroine to grind her teeth from anger. This is my younger sister, Luna. Say hello, Luna. He continued without even giving her any time to retort. Hello Mirko-sensei. The small robot happily greeted, tilting its head in a mildly cute way. The fuck? The heroine eloquently asked, once more taking a look at the humanoid robot that was happily chatting with an orange-haired girl about something. Hey, I understand your confusion. Her quirk doesn't really allow her to do things that mine does, so I needed to prepare her this body myself. She spent a really long time without any limbs, so she may appear a bit clumsy at times. Please forgive her for that. Izuku continued, walking beside her and observing how Luna was interacting with everyone. Hold up. What do you mean she didn't have any limbs? Mirko asked with a bit of shock in her voice. What in the world did those kids go through to speak about things like this so casually? It's mostly because of her meta ability, but that's a rather long story and my time is short. Would you mind if I left Luna with you to observe the training? The Titan asked with a surprisingly soft tone. I'm not a fucking babysitter, you tin can. She barked back, kicking his leg with a heavy clang of metal from her leg protectors. She won't get in your way, at least not on purpose. He continued, not even acknowledging the attack on the rabbit heroine's agitation. She can stay here, but I want a rematch. Without stupid lines on the ground and without holding back. Mirko growled out, getting a half-lidded look from the giant's one eye. Did he smile at her? It looked like that at least. Deal. Thanks Rumi, I really appreciate that. Izuku said, surprising the white-haired woman with his words. She was about to retort with a snide remark, but a blue blur flew into the gym, getting the attention of everyone with how it blasted through the door. A girl in a blue, green, and white suit came to a stop near the Titan, floating beside his head, on golden spirals of energy coming from her limbs. Her long blue hair fluttered in the air, two spiraling horns on top of her head standing proudly. I found you, Izuku-kun. Yukio wants to go on the patrol and is waiting near the main gate like always. Oh, hey Mirko. Is it true that you really like carrots? Is your mutation based on an albino rabbit? Do you have rabbit feet, or are your boots only styled to look like that? The newcomer started to happily shoot questions one after another at the pro-heroine, who clearly didn't know how to react to the stream of words fired her way. I'm already done here, Najire. Let's go. I still have that press conference in the afternoon to attend. The steel giant said, extending his hand for his teammate to land on. Ah, I wanted to ask Mirko a few more things. Hey, who's that little robot there? I never saw anything like it in UA before. The brunette pouted but quickly changed her focus to Luna, who was still conversing with a few people. That's my younger sister, Luna. I just asked Mirko to keep an eye on her for a bit. To Izuku's reply, Najire slapped her both cheeks, her mouth forming a big O from surprise. You never told me you had a sister. She exclaimed, pointing an accusatory finger at him. You never asked. He replied simply, observing how the girl in his palm stopped in her tracks for a few seconds. I didn't. She asked, deflating a bit. Her only answer was Izuku's eye moving from side to side as if he was shaking his head. Okay. Let's get started, brats. Warm up and we will go for a few laps around the campus for starters. Mirko ordered, and the students followed her words immediately. Luna happily skipped to the heroine, nearly falling over when she tried to stop by the mildly irritated Mirko. Luna, please behave and remember to listen to Mirko. May will pick you up after lunch, so go with Princess after the training, okay? Izuku asked his sister. Okay. See you later, Oni-chan. Luna happily chirped, waving a hand after the Titan, who in a few swift steps disappeared from the gym. Oi, brat. Mirko called out to the white robot beside her, getting its full attention as the two vertical eyes on its faceplate blinked at her curiously. Why is your brother so insufferable? Oh, I think that he just really likes you, Mirko-sensei. I never really saw Oni-chan joking like that with anyone else. Luna happily said back. Can't he show it like a normal person? The white-haired heroine asked, getting only a shrug from her temporary charge. Fuck it. Are you going to run with us or are you going to wait here? It will take around an hour for those scrubs to make a few laps around the school grounds. I would love to. But I still have a bit of a problem with fast running and stopping, the AI replied, bashfully looking down at the ground. No time like the present to learn then Mirko asked with a crooked grin. If you won't be able to keep up you can always return here and wait for us. I won't be watching your ass all day but if I'm already teaching those brats over there, what's one more to my torment? She asked, getting a happy, yay, from the small robot beside her. It may have been out of character for her but she felt that those two had lived through enough bullshit, especially the older sibling. The steel giant was barely acting his age and the sole fact that he had to abandon his humanity and take such a form was hard enough to swallow. How old are you anyway? Oh, 12. You don't know. No, not really, the robot answered, bashfully turning away. The rabbit heroine looked once more at the white and blue robot beside her which clearly was hiding something but decided against trying to learn what exactly it was. With the rest of the group finishing their warm-ups she started the run with Luna beside her keeping up without too much problem. And she definitely didn't faceplant into the ground when the group stopped after their run, even if someone would say otherwise. Sitting in his office chair, Nezu observed the two visitors from the Hero Commission International that suddenly requested a meeting. One of them he knew quite well, seeing that he was All Might's old sidekick and they had worked with each other a few times already. Sir Night Eye sat on a chair on the other side of his desk, his face as unreadable as ever. The other one was a bit of a mystery, seeing that it was one of the heroes trained by the HCI itself. A woman in her late 20s with dark blue hair that had pink accents, purple eyes, and a rather bored look on her face. The infamous Lady Nagant, a battle hero with an impressive list of apprehended criminals and villains. It was a shame that most of them suffered extensive wounds or even missing limbs after they met with this heroine. Well then, what do we owe the pleasure of this meeting to? The principal asked with his cheery voice. The situation is dire so I won't be trying to skirt around the issue. I confirmed with my quirk that Hokkaido will be invaded by the MLA forces in 17 days. A few lesser precognition type quirks confirmed my own vision so it is certain. Night Eye started. That's rather concerning. I assume that HCI wants my expertise in organizing the defense. Nezu said, rather seriously for once. No, not really. Your input would be appreciated but that isn't the cause of our visit. The bespectacled hero replied, for once surprising the Chimera. As per orders from the JSDF, HCI, and the government, all of the top 100 heroes are required to prepare for the defense of our borders. We were tasked with delivering those orders to the heroes who are currently training your students. The second visitor entered the conversation. After thorough evaluation of the students that already possess the temporary hero license, it was decided to relegate some of them to the secondary defense lines as support and to stop any stray enemies. Lady Nagant explained. The small friendly smile that was on Nezu's face disappeared after hearing that, his posture straightening a bit. According to the documentation that was sent to me earlier, our students were going to be relegated to peacekeeping and overall security of the civilian infrastructure in the absence of the pro-heroes. The situation is more complicated than we would like, Night Eye stated once more. I was using my quirk on different heroes and military personnel for the past month, trying to pinpoint the accurate dates of enemy attacks. The number of enemies in my visions heavily outmatched our predictions, we barely managed to push back the initial assault and the following attacks. That's why it was decided that reinforcing the secondary defense lines with already experienced students of heroic courses would be needed. The green-haired hero tried to explain. Only now the principal spotted the dark circles under the man's eyes, barely hidden by makeup and his glasses. That's not a good idea. By concentrating our forces in this way we are exposing too many areas for potential attacks. Villain activity will probably skyrocket with every heavy hitter being carted off to Hokkaido. Nezu said more to himself than to his guests. That's why all the students of the first-year heroic courses will receive a temporary quirk usage permit and will be dispatched as support for the local law enforcement. Additionally, all the heroes that were deemed unable to fight in the upcoming confrontation or to perform a support role will be staying behind to perform their duties. Lady Nagant supplied, simultaneously taking out a small folder from her briefcase that had been resting on her lap until now. This is the list of the students selected, based on their documented performance during the internships and the festival. Taking the offered documents, Nezu skimmed through them until he stopped on one particular student with a slight frown. Why is Knight Izuku on this list? He is a first-year student and doesn't possess the license like the rest of the children here. The principal asked while pointing at the list in his paws. Ah, yes. The mysterious and certainly powerful exchange student who showed up out of nowhere. The only heroine in the room said, leaning forward in her seat. A person strong enough to go toe-to-toe with a hero like Mirko, not to mention that it was blatantly obvious that he did that without even trying. An asset like him could be invaluable in the upcoming operations. The HCI decided to grant him the provisional hero license with me becoming a handler of sorts for him. Nezu's fur bristled a bit from her words. This is unacceptable. That child went through hell at the hands of those terrorists, he even lost his body to be able to survive. I will not allow this. He replied immediately in a cold voice. That decision was made by the director board of HCI, the potential of having another All Might level combatant can't be ignored. Lady Nagant said after a short pause in the conversation. Personally, I'm not too fond of that decision either. I know how the battlefield can impact someone from personal experience, but we are fighting for the lives of innocent civilians. We are giving up our own lives so thousands of people don't have to. The blue-haired woman replied, but it sounded more like she was trying to convince herself than the chimera before her. That young man went through a lot. Nezu started but trailed off. Getting out of his chair, he went to a nearby cabinet and took out a tea set. You can try to convince him by yourselves, but I doubt that he will agree to your offer. He continued after a few minutes had passed in silence, taking a sip of freshly brewed tea. I believe that currently he is on a patrol with Yukio, after that they are scheduled for an interview at 2 p.m. You can speak with Izuku-kun after that, he said, returning to his seat with a steaming cup of tea in his paws. Sadly, we can't wait for so long today. We will return at the end of the week. Lady Nagant informed while standing up. Night Eye followed her and also stood up but seemed a bit conflicted with something. Still sitting in his chair, the principal observed how his guests left his office and spun around to the giant window behind him when the doors closed shut. With a heavy sigh leaving his mouth, he observed the small groups of students that were training in the distance, knowing that what would happen in the upcoming weeks would change their lives forever. Grunting from the impact, Momo caught the flying form of Kirishima that was sent her way after a vicious roundhouse kick from Mirko. The red-headed teen thanked her and charged back at their instructor, activating their quirk on the way. Deciding to use the opportunity, she sprinted after him and closed the distance to the rabbit heroine. The twin engines at her hips roared to life, shooting the raven-haired girl after her classmate with a lot of speed. Let's go, Tiger Rabbit. Show me what you got. The manliest man in the Class 1A didn't finish his taunt as an enraged white rabbit drop-kicked him with so much force that he was launched into a concrete pillar and threw it just to crash into the outside wall of the gym and fall to the ground in a coughing fit. Stop calling me that, you brat. I swear, if I hear that one more time I'll rip you a new one. Mirko shouted with a pulsing vein on her forehead. Not slowing down, Momo threw a fast punch at her opponent who easily sidestepped it and countered with a rising knee into the rabbinet's stomach. Tanking that hit with another grunt, the black-haired girl tried to strike with her other arm only to be once more dodged. The jump kick of the teenage girl swiveled forward, belching a lot more fire than thrust, causing the heroine to back away before she could counterattack. Is that all you have in you? Mirko asked with a growing smirk. After a short stare down, Momo closed the distance, throwing a fast jab at her opponent's face. Mirko once more dodged and performed a fast sidekick that to her glee was blocked by the girl. The two of them started exchanging blows, with the rabbit taking quite a few of them. She could feel the bruises that were forming, but slowing down wasn't an option with the rabbit heroine throwing kick after kick into her slowly crumbling guard, the only thing keeping her still in the game being the neural interface as it displayed predictions of the incoming attacks onto her HUD. Suddenly a green flash of light flew out of nowhere, causing Mirko to jump back, and crashed through another concrete pillar. With a smile on her face, Izumi walked out of the dust that she created and rocketed at the white-haired heroine once more, trying to attack her with a kick, her body crackling with emerald energy. With a vicious grin on her face, her opponent responded in kind, both of them meeting midair in a deafening thunderclap and a small shockwave. Mirko emerged victorious yet again, Izumi being launched through the outside wall into the track nearby, scaring a few students who were just running by the building. A loud buzzer sounded through the gym, announcing the lunch break after a few more seconds passed. Momo massaged her forearms a bit, trying to get rid of the numbness in them. That was so awesome, Mirko-sensei. My sensors barely were able to keep up with your movements. Luna happily called from the sidelines, skipping to them with a bottle of water. Thanks, twerp. If only your brother were more like you. The rabbit heroine replied with a grin. Izumi chose this moment to jump back inside and land beside them, trying to shake out pieces of concrete and dust from her hair. I should remember to put on my cowl before a fight, the greenette commented to herself. Are you alright? That kick looked nasty, Momo asked after recovering a bit. Yeah, just a few bruises from the tumble after. We should probably gather everyone near the door for recovery girl. I think I saw Tetsu-san stuck in the wall somewhere over there, the rabbit proposed after a few more moments of silence had passed. I would really appreciate that. The two girls nearly jumped out of their skin when the small elderly nurse spoke from just behind them. Momo and Izumi quickly gathered their group, with a few of them still conscious this time. Luna wanted to help too, but she only fell over when trying to carry Kirishima, so they decided that it would be better if she waited with the recovery girl until they finished by themselves. The AI observed with curiosity how the short old woman stretched out a part of her face to touch the injured students, just for them to heal before her eyes. It was such a fascinating sight that she even leaned closer to get a better look. Wow, they are getting better so fast, she said in wonder after observing yet another student get healed. Thankfully that knuckle-headed rabbit can hold back. Who are you? I have a feeling I heard you somewhere, recovery girl asked, squinting a bit at the white and blue robot that started to follow her from one patient to another by itself. Oh, I'm Night Luna. It's nice to meet you, recovery girl sensei. The robot in question replied happily with a tilt of its head. I'm supposed to follow Momo-san. After the exercises and I'm waiting for her with you. I can go away if I'm in the way. She continued. No, dearie. You aren't bothering me. I'm just curious, as this is the first time I've ever seen someone like you. Nezu really should start to inform us of developments such as this, the elderly nurse said, moving to the last two students whom Momo and Izumi carried to them. After being checked out by the school nurse, and in Momo's case healed by her too, the three of them walked to the cafeteria after a quick shower and change of clothes. Luna was marveling for the whole time about the things that her mother and auntie were doing, especially when the two of them started to change from their hero suits into normal clothing. The raven-haired girl barely held her giggle back when both of them saw the little robot trying to put on her shirt when they returned from showers. Luna-san, I think you should ask your older brother if you even can wear clothing in the first place. Izumi said to the sulking AI that in the end didn't manage to put that shirt on. I'm sure Zuku will find a way to make it possible if it isn't already. I'll even make you a few clothes if you want, Momo added with a smile, still thinking about the poor robot tangled in the sleeves. Really? Luna asked, looking at her mother with those big, blue, electronic eyes of hers in a disturbingly accurate robot version of puppy dog eyes. Of course. You can even choose what they will look like. The rabbit replied nearly immediately, not being able to resist. Yay. Thanks, Mom. The small robot jumped giddily, hugging her mother from the side. Did that robot call her mom? Wait, isn't that the girlfriend of that first year that looks like a Gundam? Hey, you were right. And that's the girl who passed out in the semifinals while still standing. Yeah, that was so metal. Looking around, the two girls and the AI saw that there were a lot of other students walking around and all of them looked in their direction while whispering not so subtly about them. Deciding that it would be a good idea to not be the center of attention anymore, the three of them quickly went to the cafeteria to meet with the rest of their friends. Are you ready with that camera, Takaru? A ginger-haired woman asked her colleague who hoisted the mentioned device onto his shoulder with a thumbs up. I'm ready to start rolling whenever you need me to. The cameraman with short brown hair replied, looking around the large hall where they were gathered with other journalists. It looked to be a repurposed training gym, and even quite a few equipment racks could be easily seen on the other side of the room. Concrete obstacles littered the area behind a small scene that was constructed just for this occasion, clearly prepared for some kind of combat training. Do you think that we will be able to get an interview with Night-san after this? His coworker asked with a lot of excitement in her voice. Probably not. Maybe a few questions if they intend on answering any. He replied, scanning the crowds around. A lot of their competition was around. Every single news station and outlet sent someone here just to try and scoop some information. Good day everyone. The bit squeaky voice of Principal Nezu caused the ongoing small talk to quieten down, and everyone looked in the direction of the raised platform before them. A series of flashes from the cameras lit up the room, causing the chimera to squint a bit. At the back of the stage, Eraserhead stood in a black suit, his hair in a neat ponytail. Beside him was Power Loader, also in a black suit but still with his gauntlets and helmet on. The two of them looked more like bodyguards to the principal than anything else. Thank you all for gathering on such short notice. Nezu started. As everyone probably knows, the main topic of this conference will be our honor student. With some of your colleagues displaying a bit of unprofessional behavior and approaching him during his internship, we decided to give you all this opportunity to learn of his origin. To his words, a slight murmur ran through the crowd but was silenced when the large doors to the building opened, revealing the Titan in question. Without further ado, Knight Izuku. All the cameras immediately turned around, following the steel giant as he walked up to Nezu with a greeting. Thank you, Principal Nezu. Good afternoon everyone. Standing beside the small chimera, Izuku bowed a bit before the gathered people. Once more cameras flashed, and a few reporters immediately started to ask questions. Takanuru Yoichi from Voice of the People. What was your experience with the Meta Liberation Army? Rekio Yugi from Heroic Japan. Have you considered skipping the schooling to enter the hero industry earlier? Miya Hibimi from Musudafu Heroics. Are you really unable to return to your original form from before this transformation? Please calm down. There will be an opportunity to ask questions later. Nezu stopped them immediately, regaining control. Night-san here agreed to divulge some personal information and he has the right to decide against answering any questions. There will be a short Q&A at the end for any additional questions you may have. Night-san, if you would. The principal gestured to the Titan who nodded with his optic. Thank you, Principal. I need to admit that this situation is quite overwhelming to me at this point, even if it doesn't seem so. He started, looking over the crowd. To start, I would like to explain how my quirk works. That would in itself explain quite a few things that happened to me and my family. Sadly, because of the events that transpired, my memory of them is quite fragmented and I'm still trying to discover what really happened back in the USA. To his words, a soft murmur went through the crowd but nobody tried to ask anything yet. Technological adaptation is a combination of a transformation and technopathic abilities. It allows me to adapt to the task at hand by changing the structure of my organism to a mechanical equivalent without any way of turning back. It may seem like a rather serious drawback, but when used on a smaller scale it was rather helpful. At the age of 6, I lost one of my eyes, but it wasn't really a problem because I was able to replace it without an issue. At this moment a female reporter raised her arm to ask a question but was waved down by the Titan. Please hold on to your questions until the end of my story. If they aren't too personal, I'll probably answer them all, Izuku repeated once more. My mother was the owner of a mechanical workshop and used her quirk to aid her in the work. My father died before my birth, so I never met him. I also have a half-sister from my mother's second marriage. She actually resides on UA grounds after we managed to rescue her around 2 weeks ago. Dropping that bombshell, he observed how nearly all of the reporters stood up, shouting questions one over another. Please calm down. An official statement about Night Luna will be made by UA after this interview is over. Nezu once more intervened. Waiting for the crowd to sit back down, Izuku continued. Our first confrontation with the group known as the Meta Liberation Army was when I was 10 years old. I was caught up in a terrorist attack and lost both my legs and an arm. At first, they took me as a hostage, seeing that I wasn't dying and the bleeding stopped. My quirk worked overtime, straining to its abilities to keep me alive. Obviously, I lost consciousness after that, waking up in a small concrete cell with a set of crude bionic limbs that my meta ability managed to cobble together. This time the whole place went silent, a few people even looked a bit pale. In the span of a year, I was experimented on, my organs and limbs were removed just to watch how my quirk would work around the issue. By the 8th month, my meta ability evolved in a way, creating a swarm of microscopic robots that increased my regeneration abilities exponentially. Thankfully, I was able to hide that fact from my captors because they would probably try to rip them out of my body too. With a soft thud, a man with long lanky limbs hit the floor, nobody managing to catch him in time. A few staff workers quickly carried the man while Izuku paused in his story, waiting for the small commotion to end. I believe that it would be for the best if you omitted the more grisly details, Knight-san, Nezu spoke, getting a small nod from the Titan. Of course. The result of all that experimentation was that my body became nearly fully cybernetic, with barely any organic tissues. The 8 dots around his eye lit up, a nearly 2-meter tall humanoid robot constructing itself from light on the stage beside him. The cameras immediately went to work, a sea of flashes and shutter clicks filling the place. The figure was wiry, its limbs barely anything more than skeletal. The torso was extremely slim, supporting his head, which was the only thing that somewhat allowed it to be identified as something more than a simple robot. After slightly above a year from my imprisonment, they made the biggest mistake that they could, by giving me a cellmate. The Titan continued. This time a small black-haired girl in a slightly dirty red summer dress showed up as a hologram. She was much shorter than the robot beside her, and the girl's eyes showed a lot of fear as she stared over the audience. Yaoyorozu Momo was kidnapped by the same group that was imprisoning me, and by the biggest stroke of luck I ever experienced was put in the same place as me. Her quirk allowed her to create matter, something that my own ability sorely lacked. By combining our strengths, I had enough resources to reconfigure my body to the point that the following breakout was rather easy. With his explanation continuing, the 2 holograms changed, with Izuku becoming bulkier and taller, the small girl from before now securely in his arms and snuggled into the boy's metallic chest. After running away into the desert, I started to head in the direction of Los Angeles to help my new friend reunite with her family. I would like to point out that at this time my memories were quite fuzzy. It took me a long time to even remember my own name. It's probably because of the experiments and trauma that I lived through, but that's only my guess. We traveled at night and hid ourselves from sight during the days. I actively avoided the bigger concentration of radio waves in fear of pursuit. I learned recently that it was quite a mistake, as those were the search parties organized by the Yaoyorozu family, but at that moment I wasn't aware of that. The Titan continued. Our travel was peaceful until we reached the vicinity of Grapevine Peak. A black swirling portal showed out of nowhere and a swarm of enemies emerged. Using my higher speed, I sprinted to the nearest settlement that I could find while carrying Princess in my arms. With the pursuit not stopping, I risked sending Momo by herself to the town that was visible in the distance and deliberately slowed down to bait the pursuing attackers away. The battle that followed couldn't be overlooked as a few square kilometers of the forest near that mountain were reduced to a battlefield. Reciting the carefully prepared story, he looked at the reactions of the crowd before him. Most of the reporters were visibly shaken but still performed their duties, scribbling notes and recording the interview. A few looked more pale, making him worry for their health. A young-looking red-haired woman shot up from her seat with a raised hand. Wasn't that the infamous Death Valley incident that All Might personally responded to? She asked with excitement that somewhat lifted the heavy atmosphere. The Titan turned to Nezu who, seeing that, elaborated. Yes, it was. I'm admitting it with a heavy heart, but if the response of heroes were quicker then the following events could have been prevented. All Might was the one who arrived first for obvious reasons, but even he wasn't able to help as he found only the unconscious and injured villains at the site. In fact, it was All Might that found young Momo as she, instead of following Night Sand's advice, desperately tried to follow after her new friend. That fight wasn't anything too original. A giant mob of uncoordinated people firing their quirks without any real strategy, but I was just an 11-year-old kid at that time. I used physical force to break from the encirclement and just ran back in the direction of the desert at full speed. When I finally stopped after around 7 hours, I was more than 500 kilometers from the place the fight took place in. With most of my memories lost or scrambled, I moved around from state to state without any purpose. For some time I would help people, performing acts of vigilantism, but whenever any rumors about me started to circulate, the MLA showed up and tried to capture me. Izuku picked up the story after the principal replied to the question. His voice purposefully sounded a bit tired. It continued for around 6 years, with me trying to run and hide and them pursuing me like hounds. The situation was getting progressively worse too, as the MLA was getting more power from one day to another and I had to hide in abandoned mines or in deep wilderness. In the end, I was cornered without any way to get out, forcing me to take on this form you can see today. One of my pursuers could open wormholes in time and space, an honest-to-God Einstein-Rosen bridge that acted as a portal. After fighting and running for so long, my body was exhausted even with my quirk, causing me to get swallowed by one of those portals. Yes, and here is the most interesting part of the story. Nezu butted in with his cheery and giddy voice. The mentioned earlier Yaoyorozu Momo is a student of heroics at our school. I believe that all of you are aware of the USJ attack and that it was the work of the Meta Liberation Army. The Chimera asked, getting a few unsure nods. That terrorist attack was possible only because of a villain calling himself Kurogiri, with the ability to create long-range portals. Izuku-kun's ability allowed him to hijack the created time-space tunnel, but without any coordinates to use he was stranded in it. Izuku-kun, if you could show us the recording of the USJ. He turned to the Titan, who looked a bit surprised, at least for a 6-meter-tall war machine. Of course, Principal. To the steel giant's words, a large screen projected into the air where the previous projections were shown. On it was a recording from one of the security cameras from the USJ, showing the main entrance, the staircase leading to a small plaza with a fountain, and a bit of the forested area in the background. This is the main plaza of the Unforeseen Simulation Joint Facility where the attack took place. Nezu narrated while motioning to Izuku to start the video. The recording started with the doors to the domed structure opening and Class 1A entering with their 2 teachers. On this day, All Might was supposed to attend this lesson too, but was late because of a hostage situation in Tokyo that only he could solve. Pro Heroes Eraserhead and 13 were chaperoning the exercise and they were the only ones that could actively respond to the attack. The white rodent explained, observing how the feed dropped for a few seconds with a red emergency power flashing on the upper corner of the video after it returned. In the short moment when the recording cut out, a whole group of villains flashed into existence with a giant mass of robots standing nearby. A few gasps rang out in the room, some people murmuring at the number of enemies that was much larger than the one in the official statement at the time. As you can see, the robotic enemies weren't mentioned in any official reports, but with HCI releasing the knowledge about their existence to the public, there is no more reason to hide the real scale of the event. Oh, Please pause here and zoom a bit on the Class 1A, Izuku-kun. Doing what he was asked for, the movie showed the forms of the students who observed in panic how one of their teachers fought with a black mist in the shape of a person. This here villain is the earlier mentioned Kurogiri. He tried to use his portals to redirect the destructive force of Black Hole back at 13, but thankfully we did reinforce her suit enough to survive that. He was the one who tried to capture Night-san here but instead trapped him in his quirk. Nezu continued. The villain on screen suddenly collapsed, shaking and spasming on the floor. What happened to him? Someone from the crowd of reporters asked in a shaky voice. That is quirk overuse. Does any one of you have an idea why it happened? And no, he didn't reach his limit. The principal asked but didn't wait for answers. The solution to this question rests on Yaoyorozu-san's head. The headpiece she uses was created by Night-san himself and acts as a beacon for him. With so many portals opening all around, it was only a matter of time before he would see it. He finished, observing how a large rift in space opened just in the field of vision of the camera and the Titan fell through it like a meteor. The video ended shortly after, to the disappointment of the press. In the following confrontation, Night-san saved the students and my staff members by defeating the mass of robotic opponents and assisted in the fight of Eraserhead by his intimidating presence alone. All Might arrived shortly after the students evacuated and secured the area just before our responding heroes got there. Nezu finished, taking a sip of tea from a teacup that he was somehow now holding in his paws. Now, I believe we can answer a few questions, but please ask them civilly. After a short pause, the shouting started. Chapter 34. Okay, today's the day. She was ready, or as ready as one could get. With her hands trembling from nervousness, she checked her purse once more to see if everything was in place. The black and gold credit card to cover any bigger expenditures, check. A bit of money in case she couldn't pay with the card, check. Was 200,000 yen enough? She should take a bit more to be sure. The double permit to leave school grounds for the day, check. She was really surprised that Principal Nezu gave it to her with no questions asked and with a smile. She really needed to thank him. Maybe some more rare tea would be a good, thank you, gift. Her outfit, check. A slightly tight, white, button-up shirt with frilly sleeves and a black design on it, paired with black jeans and red shoes. Her raven black hair, loose from the signature at this point ponytail, was falling over her shoulders and back. It wasn't anything fancy, but her mother said over the phone that it was enough. Maybe she should change into one of her dresses. No, this was the plan and she would stick with it. Taking one more glance over everything, she mustered her strength, the last part of her plan the hardest to realize. She walked out of her room, nervous with anticipation. Getting out of the elevator, she directed herself to the main doors, thankful that Mina was occupied in the living room with a few of their friends. She liked the Pinkett, but sometimes she was a tad bit too overbearing with her enthusiasm about gossip and relationships, now being one of these times that she knew that Mina would ask a million questions that she didn't have the time or will to answer. Walking up to the doors, they opened to her surprise, revealing a bandaged and battered form of her smallest classmate. His eyes widened after seeing her. The small pervert even had the gall to blush from the sight. She saw that he was taking in air to speak, probably something as loud as it was going to be inappropriate. With a swift move, she slapped her hand over his mouth, her palm glowing with creation before impact. He recoiled a bit, but his yell of indignation and pain never left his lips, the courtesy of the super strong adhesive tape that now kept it shut. Momo slowly bent to be eye to eye with the little pervert, her gray ones piercing into his soul. You make any sound, I'll tell Zuko that you tried to molest me on one of the combat training exercises. Do you understand? She asked in a low and threatening tone. Manetta's eyes widened in terror, his face turning paper white. He nodded his head so hard and fast that he fell over onto his ass, scooting away from the girl in fear. Good boy, she said with a smile that didn't fit the situation at all, walking past the terrorized teen and out of the building. The morning air felt nice, maybe a bit hot, but that was normal for the early summer. Walking to the workshop her big friend occupied, she adjusted her headband a bit. A small red-tinted visor showed up over one of her eyes, informing her that Izuku was still moving about in his personal workspace. Sighing, she felt that she should do something about that. Her Titanic friend spent so much time alone and working that she didn't even have an opportunity to see him for a few days already. Thankfully, their training ended, giving her the opportunity that she decided to use. Going once more over her plan in her head, she arrived at the support course workshops, greeting Power Loader, who was milling about between students who were working on some projects. A few of them looked at her strangely when she approached the restricted large gate in the hall, but returned to their work after getting scolded by the teacher for getting distracted. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Momo pushed the button to open the human-sized passage. A rather catchy and fast rock music played in the background, the room before her strewn with cables that coalesced into the center. Having a rather bad premonition, she took a step inside, her eyes widening after seeing her friend in the center with all the cables connected to him. Okay. Give me all the power you can, Hatsume, Izuku said, squatting a bit into a more stable position. His body gave out a high-pitched whine, the 4 emerald jets of energy roaring to life on his back. Momo was about to yell at him in objection, but to her confusion the lights in the room dimmed significantly, making what happened next even more intimidating. In the dark room, it was much easier to see the red light starting to emanate from in between the Titan's joints and in the seams of his armor, a few small and red lightning arcs traveling across his form. The 20-ton body of her friend started to vibrate slightly and to her surprise lifted from the ground a few centimeters. It lasted only a couple of seconds, a loud crack of the breakers giving out causing him to slam back into the workshop's floor. God damn it! He swore loudly, taking the Ravenet aback. If only I could spare a bit more power. I need to get this working. He huffed in irritation, disconnecting manually all the additional power cables. I know that I'm the last person that should tell you that, but this is a bit too reckless, Mechadaddy. This new baby of yours is spectacular and totally awesome, but for it to strain the only thing that keeps you alive in such a way isn't good. Hatsume called from her workstation, surrounded by monitors and a few keyboards. Her eyes and hands moving separately, the slightly crazy girl was somewhat able to operate all of this at once. The arc reactor will hold. I just need an external power boost big enough for it not to be working over max capacity. Maybe a power pack based on Timy's battery technology would work. The giant replied, taking a large step over all the machinery and looking at the screens that May was using. Maybe, but it would need to be charged beforehand. We can always try to design an additional reactor. It certainly wouldn't reach the outputs that your own does, but it could act as a backup and a power capacity boost for things like that drive. The Pinkett said, still working. I'll ask Luna for the schematics that she created with Mechadoria. That could be a good start, Izuku replied, but was cut off by an angry-sounding voice of Momo. Izuku, what are you doing? She asked, stomping to him with a glare firmly planted on his green eye. Princess, when did you get here? He asked, surprised, which was more surprising to the Ravenet than anything else. The Steel Titan always tracked her neural interface. For him to be surprised by her was as unlikely as the sun rising in the west. For long enough. I asked you not to use that ability of yours, it hurts you every time. She replied with a huff. Please calm down, princess. I promise you that at the level 1 used it right now nothing was damaged or worn out. I made a few improvements to my cooling systems when Mechadoria allowed me to tap into his own power source. You have nothing to worry about. Trying to appease the angry girl, the Steel Titan took a few steps to get closer to her and kneeled to be at least somewhat on her level. His eye was still over a meter higher than her head though. Looking up to the emerald optic, Momo's nose scrunched a bit, causing her to look more cute angry than intimidating angry. I don't believe you, she said, jabbing him in his chest plate with a finger. You clearly can't be trusted with your well-being. I know for a fact that you wouldn't even tell me if you had any problems. She continued with a bit of sadness seeping into her voice. Sorry, he stuttered out, looking to the ground in shame. That's why we are going on a date, she announced. On a date? He asked, unsure but slightly leaned away after seeing the glare she sent his way. Yes, a date. And we are going to have fun. And you are going to enjoy it, she said once more, narrowing her gaze. What about the permit to leave the campus? We must. He tried to protest, just for the Ravenet to take out 2 plastic cards from her purse. Already taken care of, we have time until 10 p.m. She replied with a smile. Well, he started unsure, looking back for help to Hatsume who still worked on her computer unperturbed. Don't worry about me. I'll finish compiling the data, do a check on the Battle Maiden, and close the shop for you. I still have a few babies to work on when you are away. May stated, seeing the reflection of his begging gaze in one of the monitors. See, let's go, Momo happily said, grabbing one of his fingers and trying to drag him with her. Not seeing any way out, Izuku stood up and followed wordlessly after his friend. We shouldn't do this, Izumi said to herself for the 17th time, her friends ignoring those words completely. You guys know that Izuku can probably detect us, right? Melissa stated, using a small mirror to peek around a corner of the building they were hiding behind. Mina didn't even bother to be stealthy, blatantly observing Momo with her Titanic friend as the two were marching slowly away. The raven-haired girl still held onto one of his fingers, happily dragging him along as the people gaped at the pair. How in the world can the two of them look so cute? I mean, Yaomomo is that hot cute kind but Izuku is a giant badass, the Pinkett asked, not receiving any answers. How in the Lord's name did I get dragged into this? Abara groaned a bit. She adamantly tried to persuade her friends raven-haired do something this foolish but together with Izumi they failed. Knowing their friends, the 2 greenettes decided to tag along to keep them from doing anything that would interfere with their class president and the Titan. Shoot! Move gals! We are going to lose them! Mina announced as she tried to go after the 2 but was stopped by Melissa's hand grabbing her collar. Hold your horses, Skippy. I know where they are going, the blonde said, calmly putting her hand mirror into one of her many pockets. How? The Pinkett asked with a pout for being denied an epic stealth chase section. Do you seriously think that Mo would be able to create any plans like this without any help? She may be brilliant but love life never really was her focus. Well, outside of the fantasy romance books with all those gag raven-haired cheesy lines and other crap. Melissa replied, starting to slowly walk in the direction their targets vanished. She wouldn't leave my room until I came up with something. I barely stopped myself from laughing at how panicked she was when Luna suggested asking Izuku himself. You traitor! Why didn't you tell me anything? Mina exclaimed, an accusatory finger pointed at the blonde who just shrugged. I had a lot of work and at the end of the day, Mo is like a sister to me. That doesn't mean I don't want to see how it goes, especially as Dagoba Beach is next on the list. Oh, it feels like ages since I was there last time, Izumi commented absent-mindedly. Yeah, I was there with my family before I moved to the dorms. It's so beautiful there after the trash was removed. Mina butted in, happily typing away on her phone as they walked. You should thank Izumi then, she was the one who cleaned the whole place single-handedly. Melissa-san. You don't need to tell everybody about that. The greenette exclaimed, her face getting red. Remember what Uncle Might said, never be embarrassed because of the hard-earned gratitude from the people you helped. The blonde inventor said with a laugh, trying to imitate the deep voice of the number 1 hero. Melissa-san is right, Izumi-san. You did a great thing by giving back that wonderful place to the people and their families, not to mention the benefits to the environment. Abara added, walking with her fellow greenette, slightly in the back of the group. Midori, you have the biggest milkshake on me whenever we go for some. Thanks to you I have a new favorite spot. Mina turned around, glomping Izumi into a big hug that the blushing greenette didn't expect in the slightest. After half an hour of walking, they arrived at the beach that was still full of people. That didn't really pose any issues, as their Titanic friend was sticking out like a sore thumb. Quite a lot of people were swarming around him, and the flashes of cameras were numerous too, with everyone wanting a selfie with the Titan. I completely forgot about other people, Melissa exclaimed, facepalming with an audible slap. Yeah, Izuku can't even move a step from his spot and Yaomomo looks ready to murder, Mina said, a bit more seriously than normal. True to her words, it looked like Momo just returned from the changing rooms as she was in a black and red bikini with a red, slightly see-through skirt reaching past her knees. She tried to reach Izuku but was blocked by a group of girls that was trying to gain the attention of the steel giant, probably to get their own pictures with him. Zuku. The raven-haired girl called quite loudly, as even the four girls heard her from the distance they were at. The person called Izuku turned slowly around, looking at Momo and stopping for a short few seconds. He said something, but from this distance, it was only visible by his eye flashing with the words. He gently moved to Momo, minding all the people and making sure that nobody was in the way. The steel giant extended a hand to her, which she sat in with a radiant smile, which turned into a smirk when she looked at the group that pushed her away earlier. Full speed ahead. To the ocean, Momo yelled, pointing at the gentle waves with a laugh. Aye aye, Captain. Izuku answered as loudly as her, but contrary to the order, he still was moving slowly to avoid hurting anyone. That was until there was anyone in the way, because when there was only water ahead he launched himself into it, creating a giant splash of water that rained down even on the four still observing from the parking space. That looks like fun. I want to go too, Mina whined, ignoring the fact that her hair had become slightly wet. The summer break is in a month, we can go with the whole class then, Melissa replied, taking out a set of small binoculars from one of her pockets. After a few seconds had passed, the Titan rose from the water, nearly completely submerged by it. His eye was barely above the surface, with Momo floating before him and laughing jovially. It didn't take too long for the blonde to realize that the raven-haired girl had to be still seated in Izuku's palm because her density made swimming impossible without gear. To Melissa's surprise, her best friend turned suddenly to look straight at her with a playful smirk on her face. Ah, she knows we are here, the blonde inventor said to the small group without any hints of worry. How? We even moved separately from them. The pinkest person in the group asked. I told you not to underestimate Izuku. He's probably scanning the environment all the time to ensure that nothing sneaks up on them. Still observing the two on the water, Melissa let out a chuckle at what she saw. Momo created a tricorn hat by using her quirk and something that looked like a foam toy sword, climbed on top of her Titanic friend, and gestured with the sword onward. The steel giant immediately started to move, slowly at first, but after a few seconds, it was cutting through the water like a motorboat, a large wave in their wake. Well, it seems that fun's over for now. I don't have any idea where Pirate Momo could have gone, and there's no way we will keep up with them on foot. The blonde announced. Anyone want some ice cream? Are we done yet? A slightly electronic voice asked, for the 13th time in the last 10 minutes. Yes, a pink-haired girl answered, her hands swiftly moving inside the small robotic body of the battle maiden. Really? Luna asked happily. No, stay still for a few more minutes. I just need to replace your air intake filters and you can go prancing around again. May replied, internally marveling at the childish whine that the robot emitted. You are so mean, May. I'll tell Dad that you are making fun of me. The AI replied with a huff. Yeah, I heard that one already. The Pinkett said with a chuckle. And, here we go. A new set of filters for you to abuse. She continued, closing the robot's back and locking the panel in place. It's not my fault that Mirko-sensei destroyed so many of the concrete obstacles and made so much dust. It was so awesome to watch though, the white and blue robot replied, a soft hum from its body signaling that Luna had started her internal power generator. Yeah, those tungsten-coated leg protectors of hers are dope. I would love to be able to tinker with such a baby, May agreed with a dreamy look on her face. According to the workshop rule 3774 paragraph 18, I'm supposed to spray you with water when you are like this, the small robot said, reaching with one of its hands to the nearby spray bottle. Okay. Let's get going then. I have a few babies to work on for school assignments. May started to walk to the exit while getting away from Luna, who decided that water treatment wasn't necessary yet. Luna walked out with her, waving to Power Loader, who waved back with a smile, still walking between his students to supervise them and assist if any need arose. The teacher wasn't that happy though, as he saw that Hatsume closed the giant's workshop and sauntered happily to her workbench, which was at this point scorched with blast marks that were the results of the Pinkett testing her babies. Most of the students paused their work to gawk at Luna, who didn't mind that in the slightest and walked out of the hall while humming a happy tune. She went outside, skipping down a walkway, something that Auntie Mina showed her how to do, that led to the dorm area of the campus. Quite a few students were milling around, even with the day being a free one. Some of the teens could be seen training or doing exercises on the sports fields she passed by. A lot of people turned their heads after her, some even stopping what they were doing just to watch the 1.5-meter tall, white and blue robot skip by while humming a happy tune from some anime. Passing by the Class 1B's dorms, she paused for a second after spotting the orange hair of Itsuka Kendo, who had just gone around the corner of the building in a hurry. Having nothing better to do, she decided to go and say hello. Resuming her happy song, the small robot trotted alongside the building on a path that would guide it to the courtyard in the back. She was just about to turn around the corner when she heard a rather heated exchange happening there. Peering around the said corner, she saw that a few students from 1B were glaring at their classmate, one Mono Manito. Luna didn't really like that one, especially after he did so much to trouble one of her mothers. It looked like his class had a similar opinion of him, judging by the angry faces and the distance all of them kept from the blonde teen right now. Monoma, are you mental? Why in the world would you even try to do something like that? Kendo shouted at him, clearly infuriated by something. What's there to understand? I just want Momo to be happy, not be stuck with that junk heap. I'm just trying to fulfill my heroic duty. The blonde replied with a smirk. By trying to incriminate Knight. Do you even know what you just asked us to do with you? The ginger-haired girl didn't seem at all pleased with his answer. You call planting evidence a heroic duty? I should report you to Vlad-sensei for even planning this. Can't you see? We would do a favor for everyone. It's clear that the trash can is working for the MLA, he even arrived by one of their portals. And what do they use as their main battle force? More robots. Isn't that proof enough? We should do something before. The blonde ranted, turning just in time to avoid a sloppy punch from a small white and blue robot. Stop lying about Oni-chan. He would never do something like that. Luna shouted enraged, flailing her arms like a little kid and trying to hit the blonde teen. Taken off guard, Monoma activated one of the quirks that he borrowed from his classmate. With his skin turning into steel, he batted away one of the offending hands before anyone could react, making the small robot fall to the ground. Luna-chan. Monoma, stop. Lunging forward, Kendo tried to stop the angry blonde, together with a few of her friends who were watching the exchange to this point, but they weren't fast enough. With Luna sprawled on the ground, he lifted his leg and stomped viciously on his assailant's knee, a loud crack of breaking metal resounding. What the fuck is wrong with you? A whirlwind of body parts roared, crashing into the blonde who was lifting his leg for another strike. Setsuna slammed into him with all the force she could muster, pushing him away a few meters. Arg. The small robot shouted in pain, wriggling on the ground. Kendo immediately kneeled beside it, taken aback by the sudden yell. She used her quirk, growing her hands a bit to be able to turn the white and blue robot onto its back. Luna-chan, are you alright? She asked, wincing a bit at the mangled knee joint that whirred pitifully, a small stream of a deep blue fluid leaking down the leg. It hurts, the AI whimpered, its robotic hands cradling the destroyed limb. Yeah, right. That thing is faking it. It's probably one of those villainous robots. We should destroy this thing and report to the school. Get off me, Tokage. Didn't you see that thing attacking me? Monoma shouted at the greenette that was pinning him to the ground. This is Knight's younger sister, you moron. You just attacked a 12-year-old kid. Kendo yelled back, helping Luna to sit back up. The small white robot didn't make any more sounds, but its hands were still clutching the damaged area. Dude, that's so unmanly. And you used my quirk to do this. Tetsu exclaimed, getting closer to the rest of their classmates. Luna sat there motionless, in the middle of the commotion. The intense sensation of pain from her left leg was numbing her processes, something that she had never experienced before. She barely managed to stop herself from calling for her papa, remembering that he was out with her mother for the first time. Her second mother was also off campus. There was a 93% probability that her mother Melissa was trying to secretly spy on her father. And around 0.00031% chance that her papa wouldn't notice that he was followed. Now that she had a few seconds to process the sudden and certainly horrible feeling of one of her limbs getting destroyed, she was a bit regretting the fact that she had asked May to increase the sensitivity of the neural system in her new body. At the same time, she wanted to thank the Pinkett for refusing to increase it past 50%, because the awful sensation could be so much worse. Luna-chan, can you hear me? Hearing her name, the AI turned her head to the orange-haired girl who was helping her to sit. Slowly looking around, Luna saw a few curious students from 1B observing her, and a few standing near Monoma who was still restrained on the ground. It hurts, she replied, looking down at her legs. Just as the diagnostic told her, the left knee was smashed open with the hydraulic fluid seeping out. She quickly cut off the power to the limb, replacing the searing pain with numbness, another new feeling, but this one was much easier to process. Tetsu, go for Vlad sensei. We can't leave this like that. Kendo ordered, the silver-haired teen springing to action immediately. He sprinted into the dorm building, barely avoiding one of his smaller classmates who tried to see what was happening outside. Monoma decided that he had had enough of being pushed into the ground, his body splitting into parts and gathering a few meters away from the greenette that was holding him down. What are you all so angry about? It's just some stupid robot. It even attacked me without any reason. The blonde copycat exclaimed angrily, seeing that his classmates started to send hostile looks his way. Of course, she attacked you when you were trying to incriminate her brother. What else would you expect from a kid whose family you tried to hurt? The ginger-haired girl replied angrily, hugging the small robot a bit in a protective gesture. Open your eyes, Kendo. That thing is just lying to you, to all of us. And now you are turning on me. A member of your class and a fellow human. Look for yourself. That thing isn't even reacting to that damage anymore. It was just acting to get you on its side. Monoma shot back, as angry as his class representative if not more. Looking back down at the robot on her arms, she saw that indeed, Luna wasn't reacting anymore to her busted leg. You weren't acting, were you? She asked, getting back the attention of the AI, which turned its head to look at her. The two large eyes blinked a few times, its metallic head tilting cutely. No, Kendo-san. This body is equipped with an artificial neural network that grants me the feeling of touch among other things. I think that when damaged it entered a feedback loop that I registered as pain. I'm sorry for reacting like this, I never felt something so bad. I'm good now. I switched off my legs so I don't feel anything anymore in them. She replied, looking back at her broken limb. Oni-chan is going to be so mad at me, the small robot whined. Suddenly a pink blur impacted into the ginger-haired girl, causing her to stagger away. Hatsume immediately caught Luna's body, the top of her face covered with those steampunk goggles of hers. The pink-haired inventor inspected the damage for a few seconds, ignoring the questions from the irritated Itsuka. Okay. Whose skull am I caving in for damaging Luna baby? Hatsume asked in a threatening tone, a strange flashlight baton in her hand. Mei, can you fix this so Oni-chan wouldn't notice? The artificial intelligence asked hopefully. I'll try, Hatsume replied, taking out a few tools from her belt and starting to disconnect the damaged limb. What happened? It looks like blunt force damage from behind. What happened indeed? The gruff voice of 1B class homeroom teacher resounded in the backyard, the large man in a red jumpsuit stepping out of the dorm building with an angry grimace. That tin can attacked me out of nowhere. I just defended myself. Monoma stated before anyone else could say anything. I'm not a tin can. And Oni-chan isn't one either. It isn't our fault we aren't organic. The AI shouted back, flailing one of her hands at the blonde copycat that only glared at her. Quote. Kendo. Vlad King prompted the ginger-haired girl to explain, after looking the situation over once more. His sight lingered for a moment on the small robot on the ground that gave out a mildly cute growling sound in the direction of Monoma, like one of those extremely small dogs. Monoma tried to rope us into planting some evidence against Knight. I don't know any more details because we immediately declined and started to argue. I think that Luna-chan overheard that and tried to punch Monoma, who retaliated by tripping her up and destroying one of her legs before we managed to stop him. Then that pink-haired girl showed up, with you following shortly after, sir. The 1B class representative quickly summed up the situation, causing her teacher to sigh deeply. Monoma, Kendo, and you too. You are going with me to the principal's office. Nezu will decide what to do with this situation. The blood hero ordered, gesturing to Hatsume and Luna. Just to be ignored by the pink-haired inventor who hoisted the whole robot onto her shoulder and wordlessly started to go back to the workshop. Oh, I'm sorry for Meimei, Vlad King-sensei. I'll be there in one of my other bodies. This one can't really move and needs to be repaired before Oni-chan returns from his date. He will be really mad otherwise, and I don't want him to kill someone. The white and blue robot called back to the teacher, being carried with its head back to the small group. Its voice was certainly too peppy for what she was talking about. I'm too old for this, the pro-hero sighed once more, massaging his forehead. Well, that was a roller coaster of emotions at the end there. Melissa tried to start a conversation. Her three friends were trying to gather themselves after the movie they just watched, with mixed results. They were still in the area of Dagoba Beach, near the newly opened drive-in cinema that played old, pre-quirky movies at the moment. To their surprise, Momo and Izuku didn't show up, but with tickets already purchased they decided to just have some fun and watch the movie. I think that Midori nearly flooded the cinema at the end, not that I'm blaming her for that, Mina replied with slightly puffy cheeks. I couldn't help it, it was so sad when Eve had to watch her loved one get crushed. Izumi defended herself, still sobbing into a handkerchief. Well, I admit I didn't expect them to show it in such a graphic way, even if the main characters were robots. Abara agreed, her eyes and cheeks in the same state as Mina's. Speaking of robots, it's rather clear that our lovebirds ditched the plan I created for them. We should probably start going back to the dorms. I still have a bit of work to do today. The blonde inventor stated while stretching her arms over her head with an audible pop. Yeah, that's a bummer, Mina mumbled, kicking a small pebble along the walkway. Don't worry, you can try to get some details out of Momo later today. We'll drag her to one of our rooms and interrogate her properly, Melissa replied with a cheeky grin. Melissa-san. We should respect their privacy. It's enough that they needed to alter their plans because of us following them. Abara tried to reproach the blonde. Oh, don't be like that, it's going to be a friendly, girls' night interrogation as the tradition dictates. What tradition? The Christian girl asked but only got another cheeky grin in return. We're going to get all the deets from Yaomomo. Mina exclaimed happily and with fiery determination. Triple A chew. A girl sneezed suddenly, nearly dropping her takeout meal from the harsh motion. Are you okay? Her companion asked with worry. Yeah, I think that someone is talking about me. Probably those little spies from before. Momo replied with a chuckle, seating herself between the legs of her friend who in turn was seated on the sandy beach. After their grand escape, girls, they found a small cove, away from practically everyone else's eyes. It was barely big enough for the Titan to fit in, but after clearing a few larger pieces of driftwood, he was able to comfortably sit with his back leaning on the rocky walls that surrounded them from all sides. At first, girls, Momo was panicking a bit, her plan going sideways after barely an hour. It turned out that Izuku didn't really mind, settling himself against the small cliffside and letting out a girl's sigh. They talked a bit about the school, then about the training that the crazy albino rabbit put her through, about his patrols with Yukyu girls and other things after that. They briefly returned to Dagoba Beach for Momo's belongings and something for her to eat, but returned to their little sanctuary after seeing how many people were still on the beach itself. The girl bought a few movies through her phone, Izuku acting as a projector for them both to watch girls comfortably. The time passed quite quickly like that, with them both laughing and talking. Now both of them waited for the sunset, the large red orb being barely over the horizon right now. Momo leaned her back on Izuku's leg, sitting sideways to her friend. She slowly munched on her food, observing the gentle waves. The steel giant was motionless, his girl's eye looking into the distance. Zuku, she called out to him, getting a soft girls of acknowledgement. Why didn't you go back to your home? She asked, causing him to shift minutely to look down girls her. What do you mean? He asked back, even though he already knew what she was talking about. You know, with Timmy and the rest, he probably could take you to where you really belong, to your home. The Ravenet asked, setting aside her food but still looking into the horizon. I'm already home, he replied, also gazing into the distance. Aren't you even curious? What if someone is waiting for your return? What about your family? I never asked before, but you said that some of your memories were returning, so I thought. She fumbled her words a bit, for once not knowing how to express what she was trying to ask. I don't think there is anyone like that left. The giant replied with a melancholic voice. I have new friends here, I have family. I'm needed, so I'll remain until I'm not. Oh, she softly replied, her eyes going back to her giant friend. He looked back at her, his large emerald eye somewhat expressing his wistful mood. Besides, I met quite a few familiar faces already. Even if they are not the same people that I knew, I still can see my old friends. The Titan continued, turning his gaze back to the sea. Familiar faces? She inquired, happy that he was willing to share with her. He remained silent for a short while. Just when she thought that he wouldn't reply, her giant friend started to speak in a soft voice. Usajiyama Rumi, codename Tiger Rabbit. She was a reconnaissance specialist but loved to enter combat. I had to bail her out more times than I care to count. He said, chuckling a bit at the end. Takayama Yu, codename Everest. She was a powerful frontline combatant who used even heavier armor and weaponry than me. She didn't serve in my unit, but I think that we did a few missions together. He continued, observing a large cargo ship emerging from beyond the horizon. The only other person that I vividly remember would probably be my mother. I only remember a few flashes about her, and her last moments in the hospital bed. She died of old age, with me by her side. He finished, falling silent once more. Momo remained silent as well, a few of her unanswered questions being explained without her even asking. The two unexpected visitors from another world were proof enough that something like this was a possibility. The strange relationship that Izuku had with Mirko made a bit of sense now too, with the rabbit heroine being someone who constantly reminded him of home. I don't really remember that much. The Titan broke the silence, his voice soft. I know that I was fighting in a war against an opponent that we barely could hold off, and that nearly all plant life died because of them. I remember sitting on a rooftop and looking over a devastated city, nothing but rubble to the horizon. Meta abilities were a rarity, unlike here. Civilians lived in giant, walled cities called arcs. Mine was Arc 13. I can't remember much else, a few flashes and sounds but nothing coherent. I do feel a bit of familiarity with Kayama-san and with Yukyu, but I can't really tell what that's about. It must be hard, Seeing the faces of your friends on strangers, the raven-haired girl whispered out. There is nothing one can do but keep pushing on. He added, looking back at her. You are strong, Zuko. Not everyone would be able to do that. Quote. I don't think of myself as strong. Maybe slightly above average, he said with a chuckle. Momo smiled too, looking once more to the setting sun that was halfway beyond the horizon. I was thinking, if you can connect my mind to your body, can't you do the same in reverse? She asked suddenly, making him look down at her once more. You mean me controlling your body? That's not a good idea really. The human brain is often referred to as an organic supercomputer, but that's not really the truth. My own body and mind are able to process such amounts of additional information only because it was conditioned to do so. You don't have any way of cutting off your own control of the body too, so the central nervous system could be flooded with conflicting information and in the most likelihood cause a seizure. He replied, observing how she was taking out a bowl from her food bag that she bought after they decided to stay on the small beach. Ouch, that's rather bad, she stated, seemingly in thought. What about something on a smaller scale? Could you connect your senses to mine? I think so. Okay. Connect to me but don't peek, she ordered with a smile. What are you planning? He asked, mentally connecting to her circlet and changing its shape into the combat mode that the girl normally used. It's a secret. Don't look, she ordered once more, slightly startled that her headgear started to transform without her input. Letting out an amused sigh, Izuku did as was asked of him and switched off all of his visual sensors. He still could see her with a few of his other systems, but she didn't need to know about that. You still can see me without seeing me, don't you? She asked suddenly, making him lean slightly back in surprise. Busted. He once more chuckled. How did you know? You are nearly paranoid with all this constant searching for enemies. Can you stop looking for a few moments? I want to surprise you. She asked once more with a small smile. Okay. He reluctantly agreed, running one more in-depth scan of their surroundings before allowing himself to stop being aware of everything around. It wasn't that good of a feeling. His instincts demanded that start scanning his environment anew. Okay. Are we connected? Her voice broke through the darkness that surrounded him. Fully. I guess you don't want me to use your sight too, he affirmed, consciously stopping his quirk from mapping the environment with echolocation. It was so strange, a set of completely forgotten sensations ran through him. The warm rays of the setting sun on the skin. A soft breeze that felt refreshing and a bit salty. The taste of deep-fried meat melting on his tongue accompanied by soft rice and the sauce not unlike his mother made. Wah! He exclaimed in slight shock, his large frame shuddering. His large emerald eye turned on immediately, snapping to the girl who looked a bit disgruntled for some reason. Ah shoot. I knew I should have done this earlier, it's cold, Momo said to herself, stirring the bowl with her chopsticks. Is this Kei Katsudon? Izuku asked, still reeling back. Yes. Oh, it's such a relief that the connection works, I really hoped that it would, the Ravenet replied, sounding relieved. She looked up to her friend but his own eye was firmly planted on the styrofoam bowl in her hands. Smiling a bit, she took another bite, chewing it thoroughly. Izuku leaned back into the wall behind him, a soft hum of delight leaving his frame. Heavy nostalgia encompassed him, the memories of how he sat impatiently at the dining table while his mother was finishing the preparations for the meal flashed in his mind. He sighed contentedly once more when Momo took another bite of the food. Feeling her friend shudder once more through her back, the raven-haired girl giggled a bit. It seemed that her plan of making Zuko feel better had somewhat succeeded, even if there were a few hiccups on the way. She sincerely wished such times could last forever. Dot, 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 dot. Well, I hope everyone liked the story and please share or leave a like, or subscribe to see that you guys like the story, and I'll see you all on the next one.